Do we have sound? I think we have sound. What's up, everybody? It is the 6th of February, 2025. My name is Luke Thomas, and this is episode 240 of my live chat. Thank you so much for joining me. I greatly appreciate it. On the docket today, I'm going to guess, let's see. Well, there's some breaking news, actually. There was the final approval of the first half, essentially, of the UFC antitrust case. So there is that $375 million antitrust settlement was approved today by Judge Boulware in Las Vegas. So that's pretty big. We can react to that. Obviously, UFC 312 is this weekend. Super Bowl is Sunday. Whatever's on your mind relevant to the world in which we live, it is up for grabs. Thumbs up if you're watching. Right? Subscribe if you haven't. And the way this works is we'll go for about an hour on the free questions. I put up a thread the day before on the community tab here at youtube.com/Luke Thomas. You guys fill that up. We'll go for about an hour on that. And then we'll get to the paid portion where you can put in something in the super chat and then we'll answer your question. Or you can be a member and you can do that for free. Right? So there is no paid portion other than, the monthly fee. Thank you guys. Thank you guys for being here. I greatly appreciate it. All right. So with that preamble out of the way, let's get this party started, shall we? You know what? I forgot my drink. I need to get it. That's unfortunate. All right. I'll get it here. You know what? Maybe I'll just go without. Do I have my thing here? Well, it looks like I'm just going to go without. All right. It is what it is. Let's set this up. Let's refresh this page here. And then we'll get to your questions. Yeah. All right. Let's see here. Let's do it this way. And then let's fix the background. There we go. Okay. Can we see? Yes, you can see. Any update on your new politics and philosophy channel? Well, I don't know if I would call it I don't know if I'd call it that either. The reality is the initial plan was quite some time ago, but then the sort of secondary plan was for basically UFC 312 the week after. So next week was the original one. There's been some life events that have kind of pushed that to the back burner a little bit, but the answer is I would say that we are probably do we want to go by March 1 or do we want to go by UFC 313 is probably the next choice I'm going to make. So I know it seems like, you're perennial at the finish line and then never really cross over. It does seem that way. In fact, this would have been portrayed that way. I get it. But the reality is we are really actually at that place. So it's really just a matter of deciding where to begin the next phase of this. But there'll be a big video to explain what will be the next kind of coverage that I do. I mean, it's not going to change in this particular sense on this channel at all. It'll be the exact same, but the expanded nature of it. There'll be a video explaining everything and then where we can go for all of that, what the clearinghouse will be, the whole 9 yards. So stay tuned. Good question. It was supposed to be next week, but either March 1st or UFC 313 basically is the decision that I'm at now. Let's see here. Do you think Dana's unwillingness to cut Bryce Mitchell comes not from creating an anti-free speech precedent, but actually from Mitchell's 17-2 record and UFC being more tight at the moment with releasing people besides struggling Rosenstrikes after GFL signed everyone they let go, BKFC noise, and PFL's attempt to survive? I don't think that they're not distinct. It's the same thing. It is presented to the public. Right, so Dana. Well, let's recap. So Bryce said all those crazy ass things, and then Dana White came out, and basically did a verbal came after him. But then, of course, there was no corresponding punishment. And again, you can weigh in on whether or not that was appropriate or not. But I'm just, I feel like this is an accurate recitement of what happened. He said those things. Dana verbally went after him, trying to distance at least himself or the organization to a degree from the views, but. And then, to essentially, I mean, he straight up insulted Bryce, right? I mean, calling him stupid and whatnot. So, but there was no fee or fine or, suspension or cutting. There was none of that, right? And again, you can decide whether that's good or bad. But people keep making, I am amazed at the way in which the story is covered, and like no one ever connecting the dots on this, and it really just blows my mind, but it's where we are. You got Piers Morgan interviewing him in Saudi Arabia of all places, which is just a perfect note on where you can have the most important free speech discussions. But that aside, there's sort of the one thing about the whole baggage of it all. And, we're talking about an organization that has among the major sports organizations, NFL, NBA, MLB, the UFC has by far the most draconian anti-media policies and is by far the most concerned with restricting their speech or what kinds of coverage ultimately gets published, right? I mean, I cannot tell you how many editorial meetings I sat in with the heads of football, with the heads of NBA coverage, with the heads of, you name it, and they're being gobsmacked at the level of resistance that various people I've worked with in various organizations, whether it was CBS or Vox Media or you name it, and like the difficulty they ran into with the UFC for only like minor pushback, stuff that was anathema to other editors, right? So we're already dealing with that baggage, but even none of that is the point. The point is this. How is it that nobody has noticed that the way in which they have crafted their free speech policy is the kind that enables them to have the least impediment to keeping their product moving? Right? How do we get a free speech policy? How do we get a speech policy, or even it's really even more than just a speech policy, but how do we craft, let's call it that for the lack of a better description, how do we craft something that is the least interruptive to our business practices? Because you can imagine in other leagues when they enforce any kind of code of behavior, which is not just limited to speech, it can be involving many other things, but it's all part of, what's ironed out in the collective bargaining agreement and what teams are allowed to do essentially. It comes at their expense, right? The teams have to either fine or suspend or get sideways with a player, sometimes even cut them completely, right? I remember when Tyreek Hill got cut. This happens. It actually goes against it. They have crafted a free speech policy that goes the exact other way, which is there is no impediment to business. And in fact, if you look at what they published today on various social media channels where they had the cover of, I don't know what Australian publication it was. It seemed like some kind of tabloid, but I don't know. But, it was this really anti-Sean Strickland kind of presentation screed on the page. And they didn't have any commentary. They just promoted it. And it's like, how are people not realizing this has very little to do with like what's really important is that everyone gets their message across. And what's actually happened here is we're going to create a set of business practices aligned with these speech protocols that enable us to never have to pump the brakes on the business in any capacity whatsoever. We never have to lose a guy off a card. We never have to kick a guy off the roster. We can, in fact, in the way in which you see with them promoting this thing with Strickland, it's not even, there's these sidebars where Strickland says crazy things, but, we're going to promote the fight around who's the top guy in middleweight. They're actively promoting that there are people who can't stand the guy for saying, outrageous, you can decide hateful things. And, that's now part of the sales angle. It's not even like, we just permit them to do it. They're cashing in on it. And again, everybody gets to decide how they want to feel about this, but people making this out to be some like crusade about the principles involved in maintaining speech openness in both private and public worlds, when it's just a policy that enables them to never have to pump the brakes on their business in any kind of way. That's what they're doing. That's why they didn't have any comment when there was the civil trial and Conor McGregor was found liable for sexual assault, because having any kind of say related to it means you obviously have to distance yourself from it. But if you don't really have any say about it, what do you have to say? That's it. Just leave it alone. That's not a speech policy per se, but it's all related to, we are going to conduct our business in a way where nothing's going to interrupt it. It's the COVID thing all over again. And again, you could say that was a good thing. I'm not even trying to relitigate COVID. I'm simply trying to show you what the through line is. This did not start from like some Jeffersonian ideals about the role of speech in society. That's not what this is. This is, we need to have policies on the books that enable us to retain talent, both in terms of what we have in our competitors, or, you know, nominally our competitors don't. And then more to the point, to be able to use them in rotation as we see fit, without interruption, without difficulty, and in fact, to the extent that they are embroiled in controversy, we can then leverage that for maximum gain as well. It's all part of the sales angle. I'm begging people to connect the dots, right? I mean, the reality is, if you're going to protect, you know, how do I say this exactly? I'll leave that part out. I stand by what I said. Framing this conversation around what is the appropriate kind of speech to be policed in corporate America, that is not the conversation that is being had here. It sounds like that's the conversation that is being had here. It's not. It's not what is the appropriate role. It is, what is the, like, how is it that they just so happen to craft a policy that gives them maximum business latitude? And I'm expected to believe on good faith that what's actually driving this is a commitment to free speech ideals. Meanwhile, the guy who he supported is already signing executive orders about what constitutes anti-Semitism on campus in an academic sense. And there was the there were additional pressures in society. You saw the Columbia University had the settlement as well, right? Some downward pressure. Like, what are we talking about here? This is just nonsensical. It's nonsensical. You guys have to be able to look at this and connect the dots between what are they saying and what are they doing. And what they're doing is giving themselves maximum business latitude. Maximum. Because if none of that stuff, people keep asking, like, what do they have to say to get separated? And again, there probably is some line in the sand. I don't know what it would be. But the fact that I even have to ask that kind of tells you what I'm talking about. None of that interrupts the business. Whereas on the other side, when other leagues enforce some of their code of conduct, whether that's speech or not, it does result in that. They're just removing all of that. They'll badmouth them. They'll call these guys names, blah, blah, blah. And then they'll just, you know, we'll just keep making money off of it, and in fact explicitly profit off it in this way by highlighting how everyone, you know, in the case of Sean Strickland in Australia, has something to say about it. You know, it's just amazing to me that I'm expected to believe this is a principled discussion about what people really believe, their internal political priors, and it aligns perfectly with the exact kind of policy you would set up if you wanted to have no interruptions to business and to be able to cash in on controversy. That is the policy. That is the policy. How do we craft something to give ourselves maximum business latitude and the ability to cash in on ugly controversy? Write it. Look, there are rumors. You see, yes, there are rumors flying that UFC is trying to book Ilia versus Islam for UFC 316. Given Dana has been talking about having having something special for Islam, don't you think it's a bit unfair to Islam? I mean, Ilia is such a nightmare matchup. Islam could get KO'd. It's hard to see how Islam avoids Ilia's devastating combinations for 25 minutes. Well, I don't know about that, but a loss could potentially ruin his chances at the welterweight title. What do you think about this? And is there any path to victory for Islam? I mean, I think counting out Islam, you won't find many Ilia Topuria boosters bigger than me. But even I mean, Jesus Christ, we're talking about Islam Makhachev. This is the best fighter in the sport. At a bare minimum, the pound for pound ranked guy. Granted, Ilia's nipping at his heels. Okay, I admit, but let's put a little respect on the guy's name here. Makhachev's awesome. Like, there's nobody in a similar weight. Well, let me think about this. Is there anyone at 170 who I would really give a chance to ragdoll him? I don't know about that. And I definitely don't give anyone a chance at 145 to ragdoll him. Now, of course, I do think Topuria's power could KO anybody at 45, 55, and maybe even above that. We know his power carries. Okay, I'm not reducing the threat that he presents, but like the way you would wrote the question was sort of implying that, like, oh, he's a lamb being led to slaughter. I don't buy that analysis. But okay, you're asking, is it a bit unfair to Islam? I mean, Islam can decline the fight. Islam is in the same way that Potan, at just the way in which he came to the UFC, having that Adesanya or Izzy rivalry, having obviously the decorated background in kickboxing, but I mean the time in which he made the move to UFC, right? At that exact moment, he had a built-in rivalry. He had, they knew the clock was ticking on him. There was fans very interested in him. Rogan had been a huge booster of him as well. So it was all this intrigue, and they just, they said, let's strike while the iron is hot, and he did. And so he had to win, obviously. No one handed him something, but he did have a fortuitous set of circumstances at the very moment he made his entry into the organization, and then when he really pressed for title aspirations across 2 different weight classes, right? It was just the right time, and then they really needed somebody. And he stepped up, as we saw last year, in a million ways, right? So this is what I mean. Like, there can be cases where the timing is just absolutely fortuitous. And then there can be cases where, as obviously as decorated and as good as Islam is, there's just not great options. He'll have to fight somebody he has at least some kind of a relationship if he goes to 170. And by the way, that fight isn't even booked yet on the calendar between Shavkat and Bilal. I haven't even heard what the medical update is on Shavkat related to some of the injuries that he is rumored to have had, specifically in his knee. So, like, there's great uncertainty there. And then, of course, as you indicate on the other side, he's already fought Volk twice, another 45er. Are we going to have to do it again with this one? But, like, the reality is, where are the opportunities? The opportunities are, okay, they could mess around and give him something else at 55. He can go to 170 non-title, and that's not nothing. Or you can just have him fight Ilia, which there's a lot of interest and intrigue around more broadly. I mean, you got to work with the cards that are dealt, and sometimes you get pocket aces, and sometimes it's 2-7 off suit. And I'm not saying this is 2-7 off suit. We're dealing with, like, great opportunities here, but I recognize that it's not necessarily what you would craft in the world that you wish to existed. But to borrow from Donald Rumsfeld, like, I'll paraphrase here, you kind of have to accept the world as we got it, and this is just what's available at the present moment. So it's just unfortunate. Sometimes it really works out, and sometimes it really doesn't. It's not a conspiracy. It's just, these are the goddamn options. So in terms of something big, my guess is it's either going to be Ilia, or he'll fight Max for the BMF title, or, I don't know, something like that. Maybe it's 170 non-title like they did between Anderson Silva and Forrest Griffin. That also seems, I mean, it's got to be one of those three. Like, what else could it be? And I know there was the middleweight talk, but I haven't heard anything that is even remotely being taken seriously. So it's really, I mean, this is just what you've got. There's nothing really great to go on for somebody who you would hope there'd be, like, some grand rival to emerge. Ilia's about the closest thing, and there's pluses and minuses to that. What are the chances that Tatiana Suarez? Yeah. What are the chances that Tatiana Suarez retires in the octagon, win or lose on Saturday? It's been obvious for years that consistency won't happen with her due to health issues, regardless of what she says to the press. So she'll just give this everything she can and either achieve the title or not, and that's it. I mean, I think a bigger question would be, like, what does she do if she doesn't win the title? Does she retire? That to me would extend it a little bit more. I suspect that if she wins the title, that wouldn't result in an immediate retirement, because that's now she has the tool to make real money in the sport, right? With the belt, she can then make again, I would have to see the contract, but in all likelihood, she would then be eligible for pay-per-view points, and that's also a function of what cards you get put on. But this is the once you're champion, that's the moment to, like, cash in as much as possible financially, because that there will almost certainly never be circumstances that fortuitous for even most of the champions at any point in the future of their career. So. Oh Jesus, why does everyone text me right at the moment I go on air? It's unbelievable. I'll get no texts all day, and then the minute I buy it, it's like, or the minute I go live, excuse me, it's just anyway, doesn't matter. So yeah, to me, it's if she wins a title, unless she's got some kind of, like, terrible injury that she's just gutting through and she's got nothing left after this, I would suspect she continues if she wins. Time to make some money, Oh, well, this sucks. I'm getting my dog put down today. I've had her a long time, and she's been with me through some hard times and through some massive depression where I came close to ending it all. It kills me to let her go, but she's suffering. Just wanted to say I'm sorry for the passing of your pups. Dogs are too good for us. Well, let me just say that I certainly extend the exact same sympathies to you. You might notice this thing over my shoulder. You know what? Let me show it to you. So what day was that? That was Tuesday. What day is it today? Thursday. So this was either yesterday or Tuesday. The days have blurred together. My wife asked me to take what was left of Barbas's things here back to the place where we adopted him from. The place where we adopted him from at the time was called the Humane Rescue Alliance. It's on New York Avenue Northeast. They have since changed their name. It's like the Brandywine SPCA. I don't know what happened there, but when we in October of 2011, when we adopted Barbas, it was the Humane Rescue Alliance. Whatever, same building, same place on the map. And Barbas was old, so we had like a stroller for him, like a dog stroller specifically built for older dogs. We had jackets, leashes, pee pads, beds, chew toys. A big container for food and scoops that go in and everything. And my wife thought it'd be nice if we took those things back to the shelter that we got Barbas from, so we did. They were super appreciative. Which was really nice. They were very kind, and they took everything we had. And, hopefully there's some dogs there that can make good use of it. And then what was more interesting was I get home, and there was a package waiting at the door. We knew it was coming, but I didn't know it was going to come that day. And it was, along with a few other items, it was this. Here, it was this. You could see his name engraved here. That is his nose. That is his nose. For folks who don't know, when your pet is euthanized, and I'm trying to be as delicate as I can be here, when your pet passes, once it's done, they're going to ask you a couple of questions about how you want to go, and these will obviously dictate like how much you spend. So understand there is a direct correlation between how you answer this. If you want your dog cremated, you can do a private cremation. That's going to be more expensive than sort of like a mass cremation where they just do it like, with a bunch of deceased pets. It's much more expensive, obviously, to have a private one. And then they'll ask you, do you want a paw pad, a print in like cement or whatever, clay. We got that. It's sitting on the mantle for Barbas. You can get, that also in ink. You can get the nose in ink. There's a few things you can get, and you can sort of pay for them. We paid for this one. My wife has the inked paw print, and then we have the clay paw print on the by the TV. And there's Barbas's nose. And I have to tell you that yeah, man, that was tough. That was tough. But if I can say something quite honestly, which is, Barbas is home with us, and the only way that he can be. You know what I mean? Like, his face is here, his paws are here. Reminders of him, mementos, real sort of, not pieces of him exactly, but I don't know. I like to say that Barbas came home that day, and it felt final once that happened. You know what I mean? It felt final. So people should know like what you're going to get into when you have to engage in this process. None of it is fun, but you got to at least be informed. Let me say one more thing very quickly, and then we'll move on to a different question, which is, again, if you've never had a pet, like, you don't care about this stuff, but if you're a pet owner, like, getting this right is kind of important. If you're going to have one of those services where they come to the house to do, the euthanasia, don't wait till the last minute, because you're going to mistime it. People don't tell you this. A lot of people just wait till the last minute, then they call it up like it's like the fucking ambulance is going to come to your house and then do it. It doesn't work that way. Like, they book like days or even weeks in advance with this stuff. Like, so, obviously it's harder to time with Barbas. We didn't get with our other two animals. We were able to put them down here, but with Barbas, it was such an emergency. Like, it just turned bad out of nowhere. I have a video explaining it here on the channel. We just had to take him to the ER, and it had to be done there. But for folks who are planning it, because it's, let's say some kind of cancer diagnosis or something where you can kind of project, you have to do it. Get on that. Don't wait till the last minute. Otherwise, you're going to be forced to do what we did. And, I think in an ideal circumstance, a pet should not have to go to the vet to die. I think they should be able to do it at home, but obviously that's not going to be the case for every pet, and it wasn't the case for Barbas. And, just a heads up on that. All right. Why most heavyweights refuse to learn anything other than striking? Not even a half guard pass or a sweep. 2-stripe white belt, BJJ level for a ranked UFC fighter is a bit absurd. Dude, that division sucks so much ass. It's so fucking bad. It's so bad. It's so bad. Like, Tom's great. Curtis Blades, very respect. I mean, the guys at the very, very top, obviously, are very respectable. And then there's some of the other guys have, some pieces of a game that are respectable. But, dude, that division's so terrible. You ask questions like this. This is what I mean when I go back and I'm like, I'm not saying every division used to be better, because that's really not the case at all. But it's definitely the case for light heavyweight and even heavyweight to an extent. Like, who is the modern Brock Lesnar? I don't know who that is. Who's the modern Kane? I guess Tom would be like the closest thing. But even then, he's so untested. We don't really know the answer to that either. There's just so many guys who lack. Dude, you're asking, why don't you learn anything other than striking? Fabricio Verdum at his peak, remember, he was a BJJ world champion, both, I think, in the gi and out of the gi at the black belt level, and then got into MMA afterwards. So, like, go back to his fight with Elite XC with Bigfoot. He gets rocked in that one and multiple times has to use his jiu-jitsu underneath to save him. How about his fight with Minotauro Nogueira? Nogueira, another guy who had not just striking, but good boxing, but good, obviously, tremendous BJJ. But Fabricio Verdum had to, do, I think, Homer Simpson sweeps and everything else to get underneath him. Like, they used to do this kind of stuff. The sport in certain divisions have gotten better. 145 has certainly gotten way better, for example. Like, 145 is fucking awesome. But heavyweight, Jesus, it's bad. It's bad. Again, I'm not talking about Tom. I'm not talking about Curtis, or Francis, or the guys are pretty good. I'm talking about, like, the rank and file, which is basically the rest of them. I mean, dude, it is a fucking wasteland. It's worse quality athletes with worse quality training. You're getting worse quality fights. Like, I don't know how else to say it. There is just an obvious case that a certain class of heavyweights used to be much more well-rounded, and that they have simply fallen off. The division has declined, just like 205. Like, the wrestling at 205 is not even a fucking fraction of what it used to be. Luke, how many title defense does DDP have? Okay. How many title defense DDP has to have in order to be the second best middleweight after Silva, of course? Beating Brunson, Till, Whitaker, Shawn, and then Izzy in title defenses is impressive. Okay, only one of those is a title defense. And also, what he has to do to beat Silva, claim on the GOAT of middleweight? Just curious. Well, I mean, there's a couple of ways to look at it. Partly, you're going to get so far apart that the next guy who gets close, I think, is going to have a different conversation. What I mean by that is, an easy way to answer that, and this would not be exactly correct, but an easy way to answer that, at least a helpful way to, like, kind of assign who's what, would be UFC title defenses. And obviously, Anderson's got, 10 or 11 of those, which is a fucking insane figure. And then Izzy had 5. And again, Anderson, the one of only 3 guys to have a consecutive reign of over 2,000 days in the UFC, him, GSP, and Demetrius. And then there's 13 others that are 1,000 or more, of which Izzy is part. But what I mean to say is, what if somebody, like, I don't know if anyone's ever going to get to 10 title defenses anytime soon. Like, that seems like a lot in the modern era. But what if you get 7? What if you get 7, and you get 7 at a time where it's like, you're having to beat the Khamzats of the world and the Izzies of the world, and you're having to beat, I don't know, like, whoever you think is the next big thing over at 185 besides Khamzat, climbing on up, and the Imavovs and whatnot. Like, this is obviously a much more difficult thing than to beat the Patrick Cotes of the world, right? And so even if he doesn't have the exact same number, you're now asking, okay, what about strength of schedule? So we're not really at that phase just yet. Because obviously we're at a part where Izzy did fight Anderson, so there was a bit of a generational handoff there. We're now kind of moving into the second order of that. But, I think you need to get close. Like, you don't have to have 5 title defenses necessarily like Izzy, but you should probably have 4, and they need to be as good or better than his, and then we can have a conversation. This would be number 2 for him if he wins. So let's see how close he gets, and then we can deal with those conversations. Dana seems unenthusiastic at best about Bilal as champ. Seems like Bilal would have massive appeal to the Muslim majority markets, much like Khabib. Bilal versus Shavkat and / Islam seems like Abu Dhabi's wet dream. I think they'll make effective use out of him. Not everyone's going to be the biggest star. Not everyone's going to be liked by the company. That is simply an inevitability. But they gave him a chance. He maximized it. He scored the win over Leon. It wasn't controversial. It was competitive in spots, obviously, but it wasn't controversial. He was the better guy. And then they're going to make use of that as best they can, because then it's in their interest to do so. But, he's never going to be the favored son. And that, dude, some people get preferential treatment in life and some don't. And that's just, I'm not here to justify that. That's like obviously a terrible way to go through it. But it is the reality. It is the reality of the matchmaker model. The matchmaker model is inherently unfair because what they're trying to do is maximum engineer for both somewhat the public and as well themselves. It's a combination of the two. And so the model is not designed to achieve maximum fairness. It's designed to achieve a various set of outcomes and goals, all related to the company's bottom line and the maximization of their time in that market, or whatever. But that's the way the cookie crumbles. Hold on, let's see this. Look, I heard Dana say that Sean might be next for Merab. However, I personally feel Jan would be far more deserving, in part because he's not coming off of a loss like Sean is. And especially since O'Malley only has had the one title defense versus an arguably undeserving challenger in Chito. I personally feel Sean should fight someone like Corey for a number one contenders match, as Corey would be a fresh matchup for Merab, were he to beat Sean. And were Sean to win, it would make a rematch with Merab more marketable and easier to stomach. Then, if he gets past Corey, fight the winner of Jan versus Merab towards the end of the year. Again, assuming Merab would fight Jan sometime mid-year, as Merab did say he would like 3 fights this year. The problem is that Sean lost a fight to Merab that was, clear Merab win. The fight with Jan, I forget what the scores were, but that's the fight where Jan had to defend 50 takedown attempts from from Merab. 50. He just got run over. And I think if I'm the UFC, it's like, am I really looking forward to seeing that run back? Not necessarily. The fight with Figueiredo was great. I agree with you on the merits. Certainly agree with you on the merits. On the merits, it would make more sense for Jan. And it's not, I couldn't declare to you that they wouldn't do that. But it doesn't surprise me that that's not necessarily the order of their priority. Because that was a complete wipeout at the end. Let me look up the scores for that one, if I may. Hold on. So I don't completely... Did they take down MMA decisions? It looks like they did, didn't they? No, here we go. They're back. Okay. Weili defeats Jan. What were the scores? Let's look them up here. I'll show them to you. I don't know if you can read it, but here we go. Yeah, look at this. He got blanked. Holy fuck. I forgot about this. He got blanked 50-45 on all three. Look at this. Every single media member scored. That's why. This is why he's like probably not front of the line to get another one of these. Because then you look at the O'Malley fight, and I think it's a little bit more, you can see it's not great, but he got 2 of the 3 on 2 and then 1 here. Well, no one picked him here, but okay, it's at least a little bit more competitive in the scoring there, right? That's really the reason why they haven't gone back to it, I think. Or at least that's not their first order of business, because, If Izzy decided to move up to 205, how many wins away from a title shot would he be, in your opinion? Could you possibly list what fights you'd like to see him to take on the way to the title? Okay. Let's look. Let's see. All right, 205. Let's pull this back up. So we could start anywhere in here, right? I'll tell you what. He's not going to fight Olberg, so that's out. You could do Walker's kind of fun. I don't know if you would want to start at 10, but that would kind of be wild. Uzdemir's is a low-key tough fight because he's kind of reborn at least a little bit. I know there's been some ups and downs, but there's been a lot of ups relatively recently. I would say you go with Jamal. You would probably go Izzy Jamal, and if he wins that one via stoppage, you could kind of justify it. But he probably has to run into Yuri at some point. So you could say Jamal and Yuri, and then if he wins that, he get a title shot. But I doubt it, right? Because he's got the history with assuming that Potan beats Ankalaev, he might have to get one. If Ankalaev wins, then it might be two. Something like that, you know. But and there's a bunch you could make, but I would probably go Hill. I'd probably go Hill. Okay, hey, Luke, what did you make of Sean Strickland's comments on Bryce Mitchell during media day? I'm not sure I saw all of them. I definitely saw some of them. Let's see what your question is. I actually thought he had a cogent analysis of Bryce as a case study in self-radicalization. Someone who recoils at the violence he is seeing on his social media feed, but who doesn't necessarily have any historical awareness of the long conflict between Israel and Palestinians or America's involvement in the region, and wonders why there is not more outrage about the killing of children. Well, that is a very fair, certainly an analysis. He starts to ask questions about why that is, but instead of stopping at AIPAC, he goes full-on protocols of the Elders of Zion and Holocaust denial. Yeah, that's probably pretty accurate. I think Sean, you know, there are times, man, where Sean says things, and I'm just like, wow, that's the worst thing I've ever heard. And then he says things, and I'm like, that is surprisingly quite accurate. You know, he had the shirt on he had at Media Day. I think I have this right. Media Day, because I know there was a presser yesterday too, but I don't think it was that one. Media Day, it was the, you know, denied, deposed, like the Luigi Mangione thing. Like, and I know he's spoken out about apartheid in South Africa. He's actually done that. So there are times where I'm like, okay, like there's it seems to me that at a bare minimum, he seems to understand the inherent unfairness of power structures and who gets to wield power and under what circumstance, and then who gets to be, and then who is the victim of that, and how what are the consistent threads over both time and group in terms of who wins and who loses. He seems to have a very keen, or at least he's very suspicious. Okay, well, there's obviously many exceptions to this, but at least in certain ways, he can be quite suspicious of power. That I think is, you know, on its own, a commendable view. As such, the rest of them not so much. But yeah, I think that's probably right. I think a lot of, I mean, dude, Gaza has laid bare. Gaza, the genocide in Gaza has been both an incredibly destructive event and a very clarifying event, right? It has totally laid bare that the international, order of, the basis and the institutions that are tasked with defending international law and the powers that had made pledges to do so. This is a totally bogus and nonsensical and bankrupt world. There is no international rules-based order. There's only they're up there and everyone else is down there. Like they're like the notion that they have actually commitments to these ideals when they're willing to kill as many people as they have, and as brutally as they have, and as quickly as they have, with, you know, the flimsiest of pretenses, essentially, has been very clarifying. It's been very clarifying. By the way, did you guys notice that Trump was using certain numbers when speaking about overtaking Gaza, which is its own level of insanity? But putting that aside, did you hear the numbers he quoted? He said it several times. It wasn't once in a while. He said 1.7, 1.8. When they started the bombing of Gaza, obviously after October 7th, it was at 2.2, 2.3. Is someone in his ear giving him that they lost between 400,000 to 500,000 people in Gaza? Because I got to tell you, that math, I mean, we don't know that. To my knowledge, there has been no, the assessments, the full tally of how much destruction has gone on hasn't even begun to take place. So I don't know where he's getting that estimate, but I would tell you that if that ends up being correct, I would not be surprised. I would not even be the least bit surprised. And by the way, it's been a banner week for people on my side of the political aisle being like, well, you see what you did. in voting for, or in refusing to endorse Biden or in refusing to support him. Look what you've done. And to which I would say, once again, Gaza has been an extremely clarifying thing. You guys ran on a senile old man who committed full-throated to genocide and absolutely funded it in every way he possibly could, tried to get money, and then made a plan to get the Egyptians to take the Palestinians. Egypt refused. You ran on this, and when there were objections, you didn't have any Palestinians speak at the DNC, and you lectured them about it's now your turn to speak. Kamala Harris did this. They didn't vote for you because they cannot vote for genocide. That's not what they can do, and it's their fault. Like, this is like a sclerotic institution, and it has laid bare the inadequacy of their platform, the inadequacy of their leadership. I mean, in every fucking possible way. And by the way, you can extend this to, what Trump is suggesting there is like beyond insanity. I don't think it'll actually happen, but who the fuck knows these days? But yeah, I can see how like approaching this without enough information will absolutely radicalize the fuck out of you. That doesn't mean we have to and we can understand this process of radicalization. That doesn't mean we have to be accepting of the radical outcomes that result. We have to look at them and then use those as cautionary tales to be better on the front end so that you don't get there, right? Rather than just being like, well, he went down a rabbit hole. The other part is also, this is true for everybody who gets radicalized in any kind of way, whatever that issue may be. You have agency as well, right? I mean, we're talking about the guy who has gone after seatbelts and tried to prove to Patrick Bet David that the earth doesn't rotate because if you put a helicopter in the air, it doesn't move. I mean, and like being disdainful of education, being disdainful of any authority figure, being, absolutely paranoid to an extraordinary degree about conventional notions of science like gravity. He has agency too. These are things he has leaned into beyond just like, I'm trying to do basic moral reasoning and it led me down this path. I acknowledge that's a real thing, but there's a broader contribution here that makes that kind of radicalization possible to begin with, right? So it's not a bad point. It's actually a pretty good point, and it's a cautionary tale, but it's not a get out of jail free card. I mean, it obviously is to a big portion of the MMA fan base, but it's certainly not to me. Thoughts on the rumored Chandler versus Arman fight for UFC pay-per-view in April? I actually like it. Now, I understand why folks are like, what the fuck, right? Because they're like, okay, let me get this straight. Chandler waits 2 years for McGregor. Does fuck all except, meet me at the top posts. I like Mike, but there was a lot of that. Fights Charles Oliveira because he just gives up. By the way, like, was he right to give up? I mean, you should have done it a while ago, but better late than never. And just based on everything McGregor's done since, how could you even deny he was right to let that go? He was very right to let that go. Anyway, so he fights Charles Oliveira and then loses. It's a fine fight, but he loses. And then you're like, well, why is he fighting now the number one? How does he keep getting like these opportunities that he's gotten a lot of favorable matchmaking. First of all, this is why he left Bellator, is to get opportunities like this. I don't begrudge him that at all. I'm not telling you have to like it, but like, this is why he did what he did. He said, I'm going to go to UFC. I'm not going to win all these fights. I might get a title depending on how things go, but I'm just going to be a battering ram. I'm going to be an excitement figure, and I'm going to cash in with what time I have left in my career to make that happen. And that's exactly what he's done. This is why he gets rewarded, in part anyway, with fights like, excuse me, with fights like this. That's the first thing I would say. Second thing I'd say is it's not going to be a bad fight. Like, whatever it's going to be, it's not going to be a bad fight. Like, just on the fight itself, you know what I mean? Like, it's not going to be over and you're going to be like, oh, wow, that was really a terrible fight. It's not going to be that way. And then thirdly, I kind of like it because beyond the fact that I understand why he got it and the fight itself would be good, I've said this a million times. Dude, this guy, Arman Tsarukyan, is very talented. He is very good. But he still has some corners he needs to round. And before he goes back to like the really smooth operators who have very dialed in technique and whatnot, like fighting someone who can boost his profile in the way that to an extent Michael Chandler can do. But there's a little bit of both, there. But it's a name opponent. Like there's some value there at a bare minimum. I'm not saying it's necessarily. I don't know if it's more than his, but you get the idea. There's some value there. It's a name opponent. And still having to get that one, then maybe plus one more. I could be a number one contenders fight. I understand you might be like, how could he get a number one contenders fight if he lost to Oliveira and then blah, blah, blah. It's because they really respect what he did in waiting and respect what he does when he fights. Like he's a guaranteed action machine. Like it's all reward for that. The fight itself makes sense. And again, in terms of the fight makes sense as a action fight. And I got to tell you, I kind of feel like, I don't know. If they give him a title fight just off of this, then I don't like it as much. But if they have him do this and then Islam's off doing something else and he has to do this and then one more, I actually think that's exactly what he needs. He needs like another year to round the corner a little bit. Maybe not fully. Yeah, he needs another fucking year. Yeah. I don't know if this is the plan. Whatever, but I don't. I get the objections about Chandler getting to the front of the line. Totally fair. No argument. Fine. But to me, that's not a reason enough to not do the fight. And maybe everyone else said no is another thing. Like half. Dude, fuck half. 2/3 of matchmaking is guys say no. All right, we got to go to the next one. Okay, what's the next one that we can do? And again, they might say no because they're injured. They might say no because they can't. But they say no. So they have to constantly find another iteration. These are not necessarily what they had planned. Everyone thinks that like whatever they tell the public, whatever kind of comes out. And I know that Danny Rube had challenged the reporting on this. So by the way, Manuk Akapian had reported it. And I think traditionally he's been pretty good. I don't know what happened here. Danny Rube really went after him. So it may not even be true. But, if it's part of a plan to give Arman a lot of extra work before getting back to a title shot, I wholeheartedly support it. Wholeheartedly. Luke, what is the difference between the UFC being the dominant force in MMA and the NFL and football? That's a good question. And MLB and baseball. Why aren't these leagues considered monopolies? So that's not quite right. That's actually not quite right. The only one that has a true antitrust exemption is baseball. They've got, but there's several lawsuits that over time have given them that. So they're the only ones. But NFL basically acts like one. They're not, they're obviously you've seen, previously the USFL. And by the way, they won, that's the funny part about the USFL. And like, obviously everything related to our current president, like it was true that the NFL was found to be committing anti-competitive behavior. It's just that the reward for it was so little. Same thing with NBA. But the basic answer is one, lobbying is sort of a really big part of it. But the other answer is what they argue to avoid legislation. And by the way, 3 of them are subject to the Sherman Act, right? NBA, NFL, and NHL. And I don't know if MLS is, because I know they claim single entity, but basically what their argument is yes, we are one company. We're the NFL. Let's take the NFL, for example. And we do have all these rules about, that look like collusion, but we do that to obviously keep, the league competitive. We have 32 teams. We are geographically spread out. Right. And so, it may look like it's got the trimmings of monopoly or whatever, but in reality, what's actually happening here is a very special set of circumstances that are required to operate this way for the league to function. And so it's just been kind of a regulatory hands-off policy for the most part. Now, folks don't know this as well. NFL lost a something of an antitrust case back in, what was that, 2010, 2011? What was that? I don't remember what the year was. Something like that. So like the idea that they're completely, with the exception of MLB, completely free from antitrust concerns is not quite right. It just never seems to come up. Although I did see there was a rumored tax proposal from the Trump team today, and part of it was what was it? Was it making sure owners were no longer exempt from certain tax breaks? I have to look this up, but it was definitely like, fucking, well, I don't think it's fucking, but, some people are going to say it's, hold on, let's see. Trump tax sports. Let's see. I want to make sure I get this right. I saw this and I was like, damn, I don't know if that's going to make it in or not, but let's see. Oh, yeah, here we go. Trump's meeting with members still ongoing, but press secretary said he laid out tax priorities. 1, no tax on tips, Social Security overtime pay. That's 1. Renew 2017 tax cuts. It's going to send the deficit ballooning, but whatever. I don't care. Adjust SALT cap, all right? And then eliminate tax breaks for, quote, billionaire sports team owners. Close carried interest tax deduction loophole. We'll see if that all makes it into law. Probably some of it will, some of it won't. But kind of interesting that he's going after them, which, by the way, I would support quite greatly in that particular context. But yeah, the answer is that they are subject to it in a technical sense. It's just, does the USA look like a place that does a very good job of aggressively policing monopolies? I would humbly submit to you that they are not great at it. not very good. On occasion. But in general, it's a pretty loose regulatory environment. Luke, should Pereira lose to Ankalaev, will it make the MMA Trilogy fight with Izzy more possible? That's a good question. Let's game this out. If Potan loses, what happens? Probably he gets a rematch. And let's say he loses that one. These are big ifs. I'm just spitballing. I'm not declaring that's what I think is going to happen. Let's just say. Then what do you do? Does he go to heavyweight? Is there still appetite for it? Or is the biggest fight at that point Izzy versus him? Does Izzy even want that? I don't think that what happens with Potan and Ankalaev, I don't know. I get a feeling that Izzy could go to 205 in the sense that it's a worse division, but they are bigger, and that is a limit to his game, whereas it's not as much nearly a limit at all for Potan. Potan's just so fucking huge, So I don't know if I see that as some kind of escape valve. It's not to say he wouldn't pursue it if he was offered it, but like, should Potan lose to Ankalaev? Will it make an MMA Trilogy with Izzy more possible? If it ends up being the best opportunity both of them have, yes, but I think you're going to have to beat Potan twice if you're Ankalaev. By that point, Izzy's 36, 37. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if that works out. It could. I'm a little skeptical. All right, take on the Topuria brother being a minus 400 favorite this weekend. His opponent is coming in on short notice. Colby Thickness is his name. But he is 7-0 and has faced much better opposition than Alexander. That's not saying much. Is this simply being named Topuria, it being short notice, or something else? Well, let's be clear about this. Ilia Topuria, very good. Very good. Very good. Alexander Topuria, I don't know. And the reason I'm going to say I don't know is, 1, he has not been super active. 2, he has been fighting, for the most part, jabronis. Again, I don't think that's the biggest issue the first few fights into your pro career. I don't think that's anything to be disdainful of. That's not my point. But it just doesn't tell you anything. Like, beating up people that are easy to beat up doesn't tell you shit, right? And I think most of his opponents have had an upside down. Well, let's look it up. I don't want to make up shit. Let's look this up. So here we go. Alexander Topuria, and I'm saying it Alexander. I don't know if there's an alternate pronunciation that I'm just not getting right. All right, let's do this. Let's do this. He's 29, so he fought first in 2015, then lost 6 years for whatever the fuck he was doing. Comes back in 2021, and I guess this loss set him back, but no big deal. All right, and then has one fight there, one fight in 2022, one fight in 2023. Doesn't fight at all last year. And then fights now this weekend. Like, we don't know shit about him because he's been completely inactive. That's the first thing I'm going to say. All right, so Johan Segas, or I'm not sure how they pronounce it. He's 3-2. He was 3-1 heading into that when he lost. I saw that one. It seems like a decent win. Okay, fine. But check this out. Alberto Ibanez. Yeah, 1-11. He looks like one of Elon Musk's guys trying to get into the federal Treasury payment system. I mean, look at this fucking guy. El Loco. El Cero. I mean, what are we talking about here? El Loco. Con K. I mean, what are we talking about? And just look at this. I mean, what does it mean to beat a guy like this? Nothing. It means absolutely nothing. And you can see this fight online. So then we go back to 2021. Lucas Tenorio. I always get the okay, 7-29. 7-29. What the fuck is that supposed to mean? Nothing. You know what I mean? And now you go back to 2015. Now, granted, this is a long time ago. I'm sure he's gotten much better. This guy's 4-0 and last fought in 2017. He just called it off after that. Okay, no harm losing that. Maybe he was really good. I don't know. Alejandro Rumin, 1-3. You know, okay. And then last, La Última, Andrés Braulio Lázaro Chiguano. Chigano? No, Chiguano. Sorry, Chiguano. 0-4. He just lost them all. He lost them all, bro. He lost them all. I don't know what to make of that. It doesn't mean shit. It doesn't mean he's good. It doesn't mean he's bad. He might be great. And we just, this is what has happened through a set of circumstances to his career. I'm not bashing him saying, oh, he's a fraud. I don't know what he is. I don't know what he is. Nobody knows what he is, except, his teammates and his brother. His brother probably has a pretty good idea of who he is. But we don't know. We have no fucking idea. Now, the kid he's fighting, Colby Thickness, great name, by the way. Slickness with a thickness. He is 7-0. I did not see, yes, I did see this. No, I saw this fight, the Norman Agcorpra fight. You can see this one online. I'll just say this. He looks like a talented professional, but I didn't necessarily, in that particular performance, see anything special. Reasonably well-rounded. Does not appear to be an A+ athlete, where at least Topuria seems like he could be one a little bit more so. I don't know what to say. I mean, it wouldn't be like do I have confidence in him? No, not because I can declare to you how good he is, but because I can't declare to you. I wouldn't even know where to start with the betting on this one. I would stay the fuck away from it unless you got, some kind of strong feeling about it one way or the other. But Jesus Christ, dude, that record is indicative of nothing. It doesn't tell you anything. Zero, zip. You cannot infer jack shit from beating guys who are 1-11, who are called El Loco. I mean, no. Look, I'm actually really intrigued by the Suarez versus Weili matchup this weekend. Is Tatiana's wrestling among some of the best you've seen from a female in MMA? The game has caught up to a degree since she got in. But yes, even with that, so we have seen elite female wrestlers matriculate and make their way over to MMA. And when I say elite, I mean national teams, world teams, medal winners in the Olympics. Sarah McMahon's a pretty great example of that. Sarah McMahon was an ape. Dude, I remember one time I went to, this was years ago, maybe 10 or more years ago. I'll never forget this. This is a true story. I had paid to, was this the year? No, this was before I was hosting. This was like 2014. So maybe like 11 years. And you can go to basically any jiu-jitsu school. You can just pay a fee and then you can train that day. So I paid to train at Marcelo Garcia's on whatever it was, like 33rd, 34th, whatever street it was, 35th maybe. And I had finished 2 classes and I was done. I had a train to catch, and I had to clean up and everything. And then I finish all that. I'm done in the locker room and I'm leaving with all my bag. And I see the pro class warming up. And there was a person running who had the biggest fucking back in a rash guard, clearly more muscular than anyone else in that circle who was running. And then when they came around the corner, it was Sarah McMahon, and the rest of the class was all dudes. She was visibly more muscular than anyone else in that class. I was like, holy shit. But the reality is, between her A+ athleticism and then some of the skills, she was able to go pretty far. Obviously not far enough to win a weight class title, but she was hardly some scrub. She had a good career, I would say, in MMA anyway. Tatiana didn't have quite the same accolades, but what I'm trying to say is these women who have these backgrounds in elite, either folk or freestyle wrestling, who, can chain wrestling attacks together, who don't go for bullshit ass, hip tosses that are totally uncoordinated in terms of how the uke crashes and to what extent that they can use it to cover position. And, whether it's how they're setting it up, like they're just reacting in real time. They don't really have wrestling skills. She can chain things together. She has leg attacks, hip attacks. She understands these nuances, has a hard-nosed approach to it, like can put it all together. That is, again, relatively infrequent, relatively rare, even still today in 2025 in women's MMA. You just don't see a lot of that, and she's got that. And I think for that reason, she's going to have just a variety of leg ups in just because of that. Obviously, she's limited now by injuries. She's been limited by time off, and to what extent that has fucked up her development. You get the idea. But you're asking, is her wrestling some of the best that you've seen from a female in MMA? Yes, is the answer. Yes, unequivocally, yes. The heavyweight division is trash. Would John Jones have been champion in 2010/2015? What do you mean? Would he have been champ during that time? I mean, yeah, it's a different division back then. You got Cain Velasquez who would be in there at that time. So I don't know exactly how that one would have gone. That's the one that kind of got away. You could argue him versus Brock Lesnar maybe too, but that's the one that, to me, that was really the interesting one that got away. Probably the answer is he still probably would have been champion, especially during that time. I think, maybe not quite around 2010, but when did he become champion? 2011, 2012, something like that. 2014, he was cooking. So, yeah. Luke, big fan from the UK here. Thoughts on Conor McGregor's recent tirade and assault, spitting on the Khabib fan. I did see the spitting on the Khabib fan, and then I guess I didn't even understand what the hell the other. I sort of surmised what it was. I won't repeat it. What he had called, I guess, the Irish boxer who converted to Islam. Yeah, dude, he's gross. Like, there's nothing. I don't want to say that, but his existence. It is amazing. It is amazing. People know this by now, but like in Ireland, he is fucking reviled. He is persona non grata. It is crazy. It's not like it's here at all. But what do I need to say? Like, I need to go on some like grand McGregor tirade. Look at his fucking record with the Italian DJ, with the woman on his yacht, with this woman, Nikita Hand, and and then spitting on this guy and punching the old guy in the bar, dude, like jumping into the Bellator cage and shoving people and shit and everything else. Like, the dude is unbound by a sense of decency, unbound by the norms, unbound by, in certain cases, the fucking law. You know what I mean? Like, dude, I can scarcely think of a sports figure, even in 2025, less worthy of adoration. Luke, I am addicted of phone. I use it for 8 to 9 fucking hours, bro. What are your tips on beating this addiction? Let me explain something. I feel like I'm on my phone way too much, and my numbers will come out like 6.5 hours at the end of the week, maybe 7 on like a really bad week. If you're at 8 or 9, dude, you are on your phone in the most unhealthy amount, like the worst amount possible. Dude, there's any number of strategies to beat this. I would encourage you to try any of them, try something. But I think at the core of it, you are addicted to probably social media. You are addicted to scrolling. And dude, these apps are designed to do this to you, right? It's designed to be a slot machine where you just swipe down and you get a fresh set of takes, and you swipe down, you get a fresh set of takes. It's this reward system that they build in to keep you on the app, to keep you coming back for more. You need to get control of this. If those apps are things that you can't function without, then you need to find a way to function without them. Like, take them off the phone. You can get grayscale phones. There's a lot of things you could probably do. Again, there's a number of strategies about this, but like, the long story short is you're addicted to this. It's become the center of your life, and you have to untether your life from these habits and then from these apps that are designed to fuck with you. Like, you have to do that. And even me, like, here I am lecturing, dude, 6 to 7 hours is also an insane amount. That's not a healthy amount either, but I at least have, moments where like the phone is off, it's away. You know what I mean? Like, we don't look at the phone during meals, and, we have family time together and stuff like that. And then the rest of it, I'm polluting my brain. But, I at least have these guardrails that for the most part seem to work. And they're not great either, but they get the job done. Dude, 8 or 9 hours, that is extremely excessive. Way too much. Way too much. That means you're on that thing like this all the time. You can't be having a rich life in reality if you have that much life spent on this each week. Can't be. Can't have both. You got to pick one. All right. Anything else? Oh, you know what? It didn't get a thumbs up, but I'd like to answer this one. How did you feel about Rosenstrike getting kicked off the roster with 2 fights remaining on his contract? What is Dana doing to the heavyweight division that already feels a bit thin? I got to tell you, I didn't understand the pushback on this one even a little bit. Guys, he has not improved at all since getting to the UFC. He's the exact same guy he's been the entire time, to the point where he got wrestled, he couldn't do anything about it, and was stuck underneath in half guard like this was 2003 all over again. You had literally, like, I've seen better work underneath from heavyweights in years in MMA where it started with 19 in the year. To me, him getting let go wasn't surprising even a little bit. And I know what the response is going to be. Okay, he only loses to the really good guys, and he's still 36 and otherwise can be in fun fights. Okay, fine. I get it. At the same time, dude, you need to have a value to the UFC. Like, what is it you would say you do here? And if you always lose to the same kind of guy and you haven't improved at all during that time, I wasn't surprised even a little bit that they cut him. Even a little bit. After that performance was dreadful. Dreadful. He might be a nice guy. I don't know. This is not a personal commentary on him, but that performance that he turned in, unacceptable. Unacceptable for the year 2025 to have been in the organization this long, and the best you can do is just maybe fire an underhook and then hang on for dear life and half guard for 3 different rounds. Dude, no. No. And if you haven't made those adjustments by this time, you're just never gonna. So they know what they've got with you, and they made use of it. Like, I understand I understand people being like, hey, we slim pickings, okay, what you're saying may or may not be true. Let's just say it's true for the sake of argument. We still need more names at heavyweight. I grant that they need more names at heavyweight. You don't need more names from people that are not improving after year after year after year after year. No, you don't. You don't need that at all. You don't need that at all. So I'm not surprised by that one. To me, always remember, to the UFC, what role does this person serve to them? And are they still serving in that role? Is this a role that is still valuable to them? And clearly you got the answer that they were looking for. You're just going to be this forever. We don't really have much more use for this. Okay. I get it. I totally get it. All right. With that in mind, let's go to the paid portion. Again, if you're a member, you can contribute to this portion for free. But if you'd be so kind, fire one in there and that'd be great. All right. Okay. Dustin says, if the UFC dissolved tomorrow, would the fan base trickle down to the other organizations, or would the sport of MMA slowly die? Boy, that is an interesting question. I don't think MMA dies. I don't think MMA dies. If the UFC dissolved tomorrow, well, that's like a cataclysmic event, right? Like all of a sudden the UFC announces we're just ceasing operations. I think in that world, there would probably be the ability to, like, I've seen various MMA organizations go out of business. Sometimes their contracts can be bid on, typically, or all of them are bought in bulk. But my guess is that PFL would probably acquire a significant chunk of them, and then they would just try and put on big fights. I don't think they would do it as well. I think the UFC, certainly as promoters, are better than the PFL. I don't think that's a very controversial thing to say. No, it's a global sport at this point, but would it decline in stature? Would it decline in fan enthusiasm if you had some kind of cataclysmic event like that? I think it would. But would it also bring forth a new spirit of entrepreneurial efforts within the sport to lay claim to now all this available territory? Essentially, I mean, there would be a big power void that a lot of powerful people would want to fill. Super Steroids, welcome, my friend.
Thoughts on Trump purging the FBI? Yeah, buddy, it's been a day. It's been a fucking couple of weeks here in DC. Let me tell you, cutting USAID, USAID, and jeopardizing national security in the CIA and the IC. This is getting crazy, Luke. What can I say about that? I mean, you know, I'll just say this. All the people that I know who have either lost their job in the city or have had their job, threatened, or, they still have it, but it's in extreme jeopardy. All of them are, and I'm not doing a bit, I swear on my fucking mother, what I'm about to tell you is the truth. Everybody I know who's had this has been right to center right leaning politically. Not a single friend of mine who is left wing has had this has been affected. I won't say which department it was, but like one of the guys purged, and I'm not even doing a bit on this, or whatever the proper terminology is. You can decide for that yourself. But one of my buddies who lost his job, or let's just say is very jeopardized at this point. This is a USMC veteran and fought 2 tours in Iraq. 2 tours in Iraq. It's not exactly a purge of the Communist Party that's happening here. Another buddy of mine who has not lost his job but is about to. It looks like, again, it's hard to know what the fuck's about to happen in DC right now. Lifelong Republican voter, and I promise you, I am not doing a bit. I am not doing it. It's been actually like something we've been talking about here at my house, how fucking crazy it is that like the first people that we know to go, or at least, either be off the chopping block or at it, again, because everyone's got slightly a different situation. None of them voted for Biden. All of them have been Trump, or, well, I don't know if one of them was, but he's certainly been right leaning. The other one definitely, I know for a fact, voted for Trump. Like, this is not like, the 1960s Black Panther Party you're going after here. It's fucking like, I don't know what to say to half of this shit. I don't know what to say to I mean, what was the question again specifically about thoughts on Trump purging FBI, cutting? I mean, these are all different things. Listen, the American people voted for Donald Trump, and we have to accept that, and I do accept that. My only issue, I guess, would 2 issues I guess I would have with all of this. And this is going to be very brief because we could go on we could do a whole week of podcasts on this. So I'm going to give about the most brief answer I can possibly give. He's allowed to seek out policies and outcomes that are within his desire, that his administration can prioritize, but all of that has to be done within accordance of and in protocol with the law. And it just seems to me like what's happening right now is they're just doing whatever they want to do and then daring the courts to stop them. And then if they usurp certain kinds of powers that are typically or in many cases expressly enumerated to the legislature, then they will. I don't know how that's going to go, but they're certainly trying. I don't think that's great. And while I think in particular, like cutting anyone who was even like assigned work related to Jan 6. I mean, again, I'm going to say this one more time. I know people who work in law enforcement, and I know people who work in the military. And if people think that the 5,000 FBI officers who are being let go from the FBI are like, these are Harris voters, you're the most confused person on earth. Like, I guarantee, I would bet everything I own, every single, including this house, I would bet every single thing I own that 90% or more are right leaning. Like, it's, you're getting rid of people that are at least nominally sympathetic to you. But short of that, I have a problem with, what Elon Musk is doing is like one of the most insane, deranged, and dangerous things that is, humanly imaginable. Installing people at the Treasury who he is unelected. And people are like, oh, what if you elect Trump, you have the, Trump promised to have Musk root out government waste and inefficiencies, and it's like, right, but there's still protocol for that. You can't just break the law to do that. So that is inherently a problem. And then, this dipshit at the Treasury who's now installing code on the back end to allow, you're changing the code of the Treasury's payment system, to say nothing of to what extent this asswipe has got the ability to interact with sensitive data, and more to that, and to what extent there's being a security protocol around it. And then more to that point, he's installing code on the back end. TechDirt and Wired reported this, that enables them to change the code of the payment system that allows them to block payments in a more easy and nimble way, which would be right out, like, this is like clearly in violation of the Constitution, right? I mean, once Congress passes this and then the president signs it, it's a done fucking deal. Like, the notion that you can take this extra constitutional body where there's like, these guys are not been subject to any background checks, any security checks, they're just being given the keys to the most sensitive kingdom imaginable. And like, I'm expected to believe that what really has been the problem in American life for the last 30 years is the influence of George Soros, which, by the way, I'm perfectly willing to believe that his influence has not been great. At the same time, it's not this, and any kind of attempt to equivocate the two can only be done by somebody who is purposely confused. The interesting part about USAID, again, if we want to have a discussion about the ways in which America wastes money on its soft power, to what extent we even want to express our power in soft terms, and what that's supposed to look like, and then to what extent we want to rein in spending, I'm perfectly willing to have that debate. I don't think it's a problem. I'm not going to defend everything that USAID has done. I don't think anybody really can. I mean, these are people that in Latin America have been helping Uruguayan death squads to learn how to be tortured. I mean, this is a real thing that happened in 2013. So this is not a defense of USAID per se. But again, if you want to dismantle it, there's a constitutional process by which that can be done. And then more to the point, what I keep seeing everyone doing who's very, very excited about what Doge is doing, which is the dumbest fucking name imaginable, is they keep saying, aha, we have found new waste, fraud, and abuse. And it's just them revealing they have no fucking idea how the government works or operates. This Politico Pro situation is like the clearest example. Dude, it's the fucking Bloomberg terminal. It's the fucking Bloomberg terminal. It's a B2B business that just tells you, for people who will like, I mean, you know who it's for? You know what it's really for? The congressmen and women subscribe to, but that's really not who it's for. It's for like fucking military contractors. It's for pharmaceutical companies. It's for, the worst fucking people in Washington, which, by the way, is its own problem. But that's who it's for. It's not, you know what I mean? Like, it was just totally, USAID was paying $44,000 just for a subscription. It's a B2B business. And they're like, aha, we've uncovered waste. It's like, first of all, you haven't even told us what waste is supposed to look like to you. You have not defined it in any kind of way. And then every time they think that they've turned over a rock and found a worm, they're actually just revealing they have no fucking idea how any part of the government works or any kind of relationship it has to various other entities and what those relationships are for. Dude, you can find numerous examples of MAGA congressmen and senators, including but not limited to our current Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, talking about the need for USAID capabilities to be enhanced as late as 2022. It's a fucking charade. We can have a conversation about should this thing exist and if it's going to exist, in what form. Guys, Project 2025 does not call for the elimination of USAID. It calls for it to be narrowed, for sure, and shrunk. It does call for that. It doesn't call for it to be eliminated. And they just eliminated it. This is like, either the Constitution sets boundaries on what the president can do and what the role of Congress is, and the need for these to be strictly obeyed, or the Constitution is vaporware. It cannot be both. And these things are enumerated. These powers are declared. This president, nor any other one, is not a king who can just do whatever the fuck they want. They have to abide by the restrictions laid out in the Constitution of what their powers are. And of course, there will be some dispute about that, which is inevitable. But like, more than anything, it's like, if they want to pursue their agenda, then pursue your agenda. He was elected. He has a right to pursue his agenda as much as I or anyone else may not like it. But he's the elected guy, and that's the reality. And you have to accept that. And I do. I think it is his turn to pursue the agenda he wants to. But you have to do it constitutionally. You have to do it constitutionally. And just daring the courts to stop you is madness. And again, like Elon Musk, I hope everyone can understand this guy is just not to be trusted. He is an inveterate liar. He has no problem lying to us. And I want to listen very carefully to the word that I am saying, us. Because when it comes to his interests and your interests and my interest, you and I are much closer aligned than you and him. Guys, if you're watching this live chat, you and him are not aligned. You and me are aligned. We have our political differences, fine. But in terms of where we are in life, I'm a dad in my 40s whose kid goes to public school. I bet many of you are either going to be that someday, or you're probably pretty close to it, or some of you match the description more exactly. Our lives are similar. I drive a fucking Mazda. That's from 2015. I pay a mortgage. As I mentioned, my kid goes to public school. Our lives are much more similar than whatever the fuck he needs. He is the biggest benefactor of government money, I should say, like to the tune of, what was it, 15 billion in government contracts? Are we going to have Doge take a look at that? Are we going to have Doge take a look at the defense industry? I mean, everyone in DC is nervous about their job, except the people I know who work in either the defense industry or the people related to the defense industry. They're sitting high off the hog because they know they're not going to be touched. Guys, the GAO found in the Medicaid program hundreds of billions of dollars of waste, fraud, and abuse. This was in 2023. They found that. Like the OMB has found in numerous other programs and agencies all different kinds of abuse to the tune of tens of billions of dollars. But it takes place in areas that they either haven't touched or, in many cases, refuse to touch. It is unclear to me why an inveterate liar who is operating extra constitutionally is to be trusted with the information he is being trusted to put on code into the treasury system to block payments. This is all super fucking illegal. Super fucking illegal. I don't know if the courts will block it. They've blocked a lot, but I don't know how much they'll block in the end. So please, my request is actually quite simple. Define what waste, fraud, and abuse looks like. Tell me where you found that at USAID, because everything else they pull out is fucking nonsensical, to the point where, again, you can go back to the first Trump administration or even during Biden, Secretary Rubio asking for more USAID, Ron Wyden asking for more USAID. What changed? Oh, because this guy came around and said it's a pit of Leninist and Marxist? Dude, he'll just lie about anything. Talking about Musk, he'll just lie about anything. He'll lie about absolutely fucking anything without any compunction, without any hesitation whatsoever. Even getting back to the fucking stadium deal. Remember what he did? Never corrected the record, never apologized, and told you and me that the American taxpayers were going to be the hook to the tune of billions of dollars for a DC stadium. It was just transferring administrative jurisdiction with no money. There was zero on the line for that. He'll just lie. He'll lie without any shred of decency. He'll never correct the record. He'll never go back. And people have the fucking nerve to tell me that your interests are more aligned with his. Bitch, your life is nothing like his. He is trying to tear down anything. And when I say liberal, I don't mean left wing. I mean the modern notion of constitutional liberalism. He is trying to completely dismantle the teeth of the liberal state to function in any way that would ever challenge him or his core businesses. And he's trying to use that to enrich himself. And if you can't see that, you're going to find out the fucking hard way. It's coming. Or some version of it anyway. God help us. Wilster says, when you looked into therapy, did you consider the different types, e.g. CBT, psychoanalytic, EMDR? What did you go for? I went for traditional CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, more than anything else. There are other modes of therapy you can do. People laugh at this, but there's actually real data to show that other cultures incorporate dance and singing into their therapy or other forms of like almost religious ritual, and that actually there's good evidence to show that in those particular circumstances for those people, it can work. Now, that wouldn't necessarily work in our culture, but there's really no one right answer depending on who you are and what your circumstances are. But for me, I did cognitive behavioral therapy, sort of traditional in that sense. Well, newer traditional therapy as you typically understand it. Is a purple belt possible in 2 years? Yes, but rarely. How good can one get training daily? Same goes for striking. So I've seen guys like Mike Fowler, BJ Penn, they got their purple belt in 2 years. It can happen. I've seen BJ Penn got his black belt in 4. It can happen. It is typically pretty rare. How good can one get training daily? Very good, but you need to recover too. So same goes for striking. It's the same thing. Like, everyone's going to be different. You can be a purple belt in 2 years, but it is, rare. Sebastian says, Luke, love your work. My question, would it be better if fights were scored as a whole and not round by round? That's how One and Pride did it. Rob Romero 2 comes to mind where the result would have been quite different. Again, this is what One does. And when One comes to Colorado, this is the system that they use. I believe it to be an inherently superior system. I think it gives you the latitude you need to make a more accurate decision. But there's more data that we need on that. I love the system. I think it is better. I just genuinely think it's better. I think going, each round is its own little fight, I think is a mistake. But what are you going to do? Is Izzy's CKB striking system outdated? No. I think it's still very competitive, what they do over there and their training methods and their ideas. I think it's very competitive. I do think some of the early leads that they had on the competition have been erased. So, but you're talking about very smart guys who really understand the game. They're going to be competitive. They're going to be competitive. Ray says, sorry, Luke, but your 6 out of 10 rating for this card is insanity. 312. Okay. Crute 0-3-1 and debutante's main card. Co-main is good. Main is mediocre. I disagree. I think main is actually good. Def not a 6 out of 10. All right, let's pull up that card since everyone hates that I said this. I recognize that I'm on the outside looking in on this one. Here we go. All right, here's why I said that. First of all, I think this fight, I don't know if it's going to be great, but I think the main event's going to be better than the last time they fought. Co-main is important, and it should be fine. This one will be good as long as it lasts. I don't know what to say about it. This one is going to suck. I don't care about it. Jake Matthews versus Francisco Prado should at least be pretty good. Here on the prelim card, I think Jack Jenkins is an interesting guy who hasn't quite had the career he wanted, but still, or at least in the UFC, but is still quite good. You got Slava Claus is back. That's kind of important. Tong Wang, I know she fucked up in her last fight, but I still think pretty highly of her. And then you got the Topuria brother. That's all pretty good. Cody Steele, a BJJ phenom, who, is this his UFC debut? I think it is, right? Yes, because he won the Contender Series. So this will be his UFC debut. Cody Steele getting into the to MMA, UFC is a big fucking deal. So that one's great. I don't have a strong opinion on this one or this one. This one actually should be a barn burner. Hyung Sung Park, and I cannot pronounce this donk's last name, but he's a fucking barn burner. He'll go for it. So that's a fun fight too. So it's not that there's a ton of star power on there, and there are some gaps on here. Particularly, I agree, these two fights are not my favorite. But up and down, if you watch actually from the beginning, there's a little bit of value along the way. I do think it reaches the 6. I do. Rundum Cheeks. Hey, Luke, given the current state of the heavyweight division, do you think that even with a loss to Ankalaev, it's possible for Potan to get a heavyweight title shot if he moves up and gets a win over a top 10 heavyweight? Yeah. Yes. If there's still a demand to see it, they'll do it. Right? Jacob, how do you see Jake Shields' place at MMA political cesspool and its relation to Bryce? I don't keep up with him, so it's a little hard for me to answer. I don't know how to answer that one. I have not kept up with Jake at all. I'd be speaking out of turn. Connor says, I find it interesting that very often guys who have very good cardio also have very good chins. Think Tony, Max, both Diaz brothers. What causes this? It's a good question. It probably seems more correlation than causative, but I've never thought of it this way. Has there been somebody who had really good cardio that had a bad chin?
that has like a workman-like style. That's a tough one. I don't know. I don't know how to answer. That's a good. You stumped me. I don't know. I have to think about this one a little bit. That's a tough one. I don't know. Good question. Really good question. This gentleman writes, I would like to hear more of your. Okay. To circle back, it was supposed to be next week. It did get pushed back. I am sorry about that, but we are rounding the corner. Stay tuned. And I think, honestly, when you see the video that I'm going to put together to explain everything, I think a lot of you are going to be pretty pleased with it. Actually, I'm actually kind of like, before I was a little bit nervous about it, and now I'm not. Now I'm like, a little bit nervous, but mostly pretty excited, actually. Jules says, what is your all-time favorite submission in UFC? I got to go with the mousetrap, obviously. Ooh, that's a good question. Some of Rousey's arm bars are pretty good. Man, that's a great one. Honestly, maybe Nate submitting Conor. That's a pretty fucking great one. I mean, it's not like the most like, it's not like the most wild submission. You're asking about that, and maybe like Bryce hit a twister, but Korean Zombie hitting the twister on Leonard Garcia is probably up there. These are good questions. Favorite submission all time in UFC? That's a tough one. One of my more favorite ones is definitely Nick Diaz and the Gogo Plata on Takanori Gomi, but that was Pride. Yeah, that's a tough one. These are good. I'm sorry I'm a little bit stumped on these. They're a little bit hard to say. Mula writes, here's my wish list. DDP beats Strickland. Okay. Khamzat beats DDP. Okay. Potan beats Ankalaev. Khamzat versus Potan mega fight in 2026. How likely is this sequence? I think that's actually a fairly probable one. The last one is the hard one to say. Khamzat versus Potan. Potan might just move to heavyweight by that point. So it's a little harder. But like DDP beating Sean, I think that's what's going to be my pick. Khamzat beats DDP. I think that's going to be my pick as well. Potan beats Ankalaev. That's probably also my pick. So like a lot of these are things that I think are very likely. It's the last one where it just seems a little speculative. Mundao says, look, now that every comment section looks like the Third Reich, how long will it take until neo-Nazis openly appear in the crowd? Comments are always, online comments are always going to be something of a difference between that and everything else. But then I saw Cade Ruotolo doing like it was on a video with Eric Paulson, and it could have, maybe this guy has like reformed his life. Like I don't even know who the guy is, but he was doing like the Uki in Ruotolo was showing like a mount escape, and the guy who was doing it with had the SS tattoos on his head. He had a bunch of tattoos. It looked like he had maybe, I don't know if he had served time or something. I'm speculating. I do not know. Again, maybe this is a guy who's reformed. I really don't know. But it's like, if you've got Nazi tattoos because you had to get them in prison, like the other donk who had to get them, it's like, okay, that's fine. That's not fine, but like I understand it's prison. You got to do what you got to do to survive. But like once you get out, like it's time to clean it all up. And if you don't, I don't know, it's weird. It's a little more than weird. It's disconcerting. So who the fuck knows, Did you watch Nick Diaz Dark Side of the Cage last night? No. I was surprised at how thoughtful he was in the interview. Did you see it? I saw some clips. There was one about him. They were trying to put him on Blind Date. He did admittedly seem pretty coherent in that one. I hope he's doing well. Ryan says, I got to say, I'm full in on the DDP train. Dude's a spaz, and he sometimes wins via Three Stooges skit, but it's clearly effective. I'll take DDP by finish this weekend. I don't think that's a bad pick. Not a bad pick at all. Ray, Luke, should U.S. soldiers refuse Trump's orders to occupy Gaza? I mean, that's a question for those soldiers. It's not an illegal order, depending on what they order, right? Is the threat of nuclear war greater with Trump and his extremist evangelicals in power? I don't know if Mike Huckabee being in power makes nuclear Armageddon more likely. I don't really know. I don't know how to say that. I don't know. But like the notion that like any Americans should be in Gaza to ethnically cleanse it of Gazans. I mean, what kind of horror crimes are we fucking talking about here? And in what way is that in any way American interest? It's just complete fucking nonsense. And by the way, that is not what he ran on. He did not run on, I know Jared Kushner's been kind of hinting at it for quite some time, but he did not run on, hey, let's put Americans in Gaza. Let's do that. But I want to say it one more time. All the people being like, oh, you should have voted for Harris,
Look what you got. Dude, Biden tried this with Blinken. What was it, back in December? He tried to get the Egyptians to take him and laid the groundwork for this by slaughtering what is likely to be hundreds of thousands of them. Like, this is not the own that you think it is. No. You don't get to say that your guy did genocide, dropped out late, had a mediocre at best replacement, and then she refused to distance herself from genocide. And then you actively tried to ethically cleanse it, which Egypt would not go along with, and then be like, oh, see how it's worse now? It's like, I mean, there's many other things about Trump that are much worse in my judgment, but on that one, that just seems like a continuation. I mean, they handed off the baton in that one. Sam Parker, does John Jones beating the American healthcare system mean more for his legacy than a fight with Tom? I saw he was doing this thing, let me just be honest. I don't give a fuck what he has to say about anything. I'm the wrong guy to ask about this. Like, I don't take him seriously as a person who has principled beliefs about anything. So, is it good that he is trying to do something that appears to be related to helping people with affordable health care? Great. That's great. I don't for a second take him as someone who in any way lives a principled life. Not even a little bit. Jeff says, I also watched the Diego episode last night. I remember listening to your interview with Fabia on my way home from work years ago. Insanity. What was that like? Yeah, people always ask me. I get hit up about the Joshua Fabia interview all the time. And the reality was, people were like, man, you had the patience of Job. He was insulting you the whole time. And I'm like, of course he was. I let him. I could have argued with him the whole time. I didn't give a fuck about any of that. You think I give a fuck about what his opinion is on anything? No. I just let him talk. The more he talked, the more it made him sound insane. So here's the red carpet, Bubba. Walk it. And he did. And that was enough for people to go, okay. I mean, I don't think it was just my interview, but it was that along with other ones he had done, obviously the full court press, let's say. But he did it. And it clearly, like, it made him out to be, like, no one was a worse advocate for him than him. Right? Thoughts on the big NBA trades? Any thought to the idea that the league pushed for some of them due to low ratings? I don't know what is conspiracy anymore. I don't know. Because just as a matter of trade, it makes very little sense. Like, we're going to get basically like pennies on the dollar for this trade. And we're not going to tell anyone about it because we want to avoid the blowback from the fan base. That is coherent, but it's not exonerating. Like, that's not a thing you say as like, oh, okay. It's a thing you can say to be like, okay, I can see where you were headed, but this is all really terrible decision-making, right? Or there's something more to it, that they wanted this generational guy to be in LA because it's the biggest market, and LeBron can show him how to be a superstar and take care of his body, and like all the things that, LeBron's never been in trouble that we know of anyway. He's never been in trouble, and he's obviously, what is he, year 22 in the league? Like, I'm not the biggest LeBron fan, but the motherfucker's in shape, right? You could say everything else you want, but he's in shape. This guy can show Luka the ropes, and like, it can be this big moment for LA, and it can be this big moment for the NBA. I mean, it sounds conspiratorial, but like, you're just left with like, the normal decision making around this is fucking psychotic. Oh, we didn't want to sign him to a Supermax deal. Okay, all right, I can believe that. But you signed a 32-year-old big man who's injury prone as like the big key replacement. How? I just I don't get it. Okay, you've got rim protection now, and then LA does. I don't know. I don't get it. I haven't even paid attention to the Jimmy Butler one, other than I know he went to the Warriors. The thing about the Luka one, last thing on this, is folks are like, there's been some questioning about whether Miriam Adelson has helped facilitate it as like a punishment to Texas over potential sports gambling, like, trying to like show them what's what. Honestly, I don't know how to answer these questions without sounding conspiratorial. So I'll just say that I don't understand the trade, and I'd be curious. Man, I would love to get the emails and the text messages to see how this was actually done, you know. Sean, what's up, buddy? Welcome to the party. What if we end up getting the Benavidez fight in May? Is that possible with the Canelo situation? Guys. Canelo is not going to fight David Benavidez in May. I don't think, if I had to guess, gun to the head, I don't think Canelo fights him at all. Dude, Canelo is about to fight Jake Paul. Like, that's a real thing that's happening. I mean, it hasn't been announced yet. I don't know if it's finalized, but from everything I've heard, it's absolutely a real thing. 100% a real thing. He has been taking subpar opposition for literally years at this point. The athletic commission, sorry, not the commissions, I apologize. The sanctioning bodies are not forcing him to defend his titles against them. David Benavidez moved out of the weight class because after years of waiting as the mandatory, he couldn't get the fight. Guys, being like, oh, now Canelo wants to fight him. Canelo doesn't want to fight him. And if I had to guess, we'll see. But if I had to guess, you could mark me down as that fight never happens. Or, it happens at some point where it's like Canelo's last hurrah or some shit. But it ain't happening in fucking May. And I definitely don't think it's happening in September either. Like, we're just done with that. The only way, I mean, there's some kind of connection to having a Khabib rematch, and that keeps him at 175 maybe. But I don't believe he wants it. I just don't believe he wants it. And he's tried every explanation in the book that makes sense to avoid it, Who would you pick in these fights? Gane versus O'Malley Sandhagen. Ooh. Well, that's tough. I'll say Sandhagen. Cejudo Moreno. Yuri Izzy at 85. Probably at this point, Yuri. Hill Roundtree. Ooh. Maybe Roundtree. And Usman Buckley. Speaking of the irony of the Dana Pierce interview in Saudi Arabia, what would the UFC do if a fighter publicly refused to fight in Saudi or Abu Dhabi due to human rights abuses? Still free speech? I guess we'll find out. None of them seem to ever have moral considerations in that way, but I guess we'd see. Do you think it's time Izzy goes back to kickboxing? He has nothing more to prove. He has nothing to prove in kickboxing either. His chances are not going to go up there. He might be able to get a big fight, but he's not going to get like a better shot at being a champion. They could have his first fight rematch as a Jason Wilness and see if he could handle the Dutch style years later. I don't think any more abuse is necessary. I don't have any desire. Everyone's going to be different, and I understand like people have attachments to champions as they age, and you just don't want to let that go. I find the easier to let that go, the better your decisions can be around their health. That's my personal opinion. That's what I try to do. Luke, send your recommendation for Sniper Elite. What does that mean? I don't know what that is, but I'll take a look. Is it just me, or is Merab being on EPO a real possibility? It's always a possibility, but unless you have evidence, I don't wish to make accusations. I get genetics and natural ability, but that cardio is ungodly. I agree, but if he's passing drug tests and this is the system that everyone wanted, then I'm willing to just let it be that. Luke, any boxing fights on the calendar potential or made that interest you? Also, have you been able to see the South Bank of the Rubicon video? Hope you're taking care, my dude. I've not seen the South Bank of the Rubicon video. The one I wanted to see was obviously Benavidez Morel. We got that. Obviously, I want to see Tank Roach, Baltimore versus DC. Although Tank is here in DC every day. It seems like training at Headbangers. There's all these photos and videos coming out every single day out of there. So that one I want to see. I'll be honest, I don't have any interest in seeing Ryan Garcia fight, but I recognize the market would probably disagree with me. Also, we should just be honest. Like, Canelo, Jake Paul is a huge fucking fight. And John Nash is hearing that, like, they don't know if it's going to be on Netflix or somewhere else, but it's going to be a PBC fight. And there's a good chance it'll just be on Prime, like Prime pay-per-view, Amazon Prime. Dude, that fight, if they price that thing right, that thing is going to sell a shit ton of pay-per-view buys. A shit ton.
So I don't have any desire to see it. I mean, I will watch it because that's the life that you live trying to cover the sport. But it's going to be a huge, huge, huge fucking fight. Huge fight. I bet a grappler says, Luke, my old college teammate Jacob just had an outstanding debut. What are your thoughts on him and what to... Oh, whoa. Yeah, this kid. Oh, fuck. Jacoby Smith, right? Jacoby. Oops. He looks fucking awesome. Jacoby Smith, this donk. Let's pull this out. This donk. Yeah, buddy. 29. He beat Preston Parsons in his last fight. What card was this? This was, the first one of the year. Dude, he looked fucking sick. So you asked, what did you think? Thoughts on him? He looked great. Athletic wrestler who had good timing, can set up his strikes. That's one to pay attention to. He looks awesome. Diet Picasso, how do you see the Benavidez versus Beterbiev going? I don't know. Seems to me that volume punching in the pocket for 12 rounds isn't the way to beat Beterbiev. Bad matchup, but Beterbiev's like 39. That one is super interesting if that's the one they end up getting. Bivol, to me, seems like a little bit of a harder matchup because he can just stick and move. But either one I'll take. If the UFC had the same athlete prospects as the NFL, would heavyweight MMA become equally as skilled as lightweight MMA and the best division in the sport? Yes. It would be the biggest division in the sport. Yes. Aston says, as a left-leaning MMA fan, I have found that engaging with the sport, especially at this moment in time, has been more difficult as of late. Any advice? Yeah, this is, again, every time I bring this up, I get emails being like, oh, you're just making this up. I am not making this up. I saw someone being like, hey, how come there's never a boycott of UFC? And the answer is there already was. You just didn't notice it. The boycott was silent, and it was the departure of a bunch of fans who find that the way the UFC is conducting itself beyond the pale and want nothing to do with it anymore. We've talked about this a million times, and they've quietly gone away. And you haven't really noticed because they've just been replaced by fans who are totally sympathetic to it and are completely okay and love the UFC and blah, blah, blah. So like no one really noticed it. But of course, this has homogenized everything. It's created MMA used to be like a completely different set of like all these weird, crazy people. And this guy was different than this guy who was different than this guy. And everyone had their own identity. And now it's just monoculture. It's just total monoculture. And you can feel that. Everyone's got the same opinions. They like the same people. They want to get next to on the same podcast. Like it's just all the same all the time. And, that's not, that doesn't have necessarily by itself any political valence. But anyway, you're asking like, what was the question again? Any advice? Same advice to you I'm going to give to anybody. You have to live your values as best you can. And that will be imperfect. You're not going to be able to do it every single time in every way. No one can live a sort of a perfect, values-based existence. But for the most part, if you just live it, the decision-making will take care of itself for you. And that may mean you stop watching the sport. It may mean you dial it back. It may mean you watch certain guys. Maybe it means no change at all. But it probably means if that's the way you feel and that's the problem you're having, I suspect that what's going to happen to you is what's happened to everybody else who's ever written me about it, which is they just have less of it in their lives. JP says, do you think underpaying fighters disproportionately affects the heavier weight classes? Guys like Myles Garrett can make millions playing football. Yeah, I mean, there's no question that like if you're an elite heavyweight athlete, let's say 240-ish, something like that, and you're a super elite athlete, where are you going to make the most money, right? I mean, you have to figure that out, but it's probably not going to be MMA. What is this? Oh, shit. A buddy of mine's inviting me to a local MMA fight. I might go to that. All right, Jeffrey says, what's up, everybody? October 18th, we got a banger in the brand new UFC PI in Gaza. Main event. Bryce Mitchell will be taking on the last surviving fisherman. Oh, God. Jesus. Okay, I appreciate the humor, but that's a little dark for me. Chandler versus Arman is Luke's all-body dream match. In fairness, I wouldn't be wrong for making it that one, would I? It's a good point, actually. Thank you, Alan. Sergio Ramos was purchased by my hometown Mexican club. I know. Who did he go with?
James Rodriguez went to Leon. I don't know who Ramos went to. I know he's up there in age and past his prime, but it still feels special. It is special. One of the greatest defenders in the history of the sport. What's up, my friend? Welcome to the party. As someone who focuses heavily on fighter stats, how do you reconcile outliers when looking at a fighter's stats? Fighters with abnormally high-low metrics in one fight that may skew overall averages. I take it into context. I don't let it define the circumstances very much. I just sort of try to factor it into everything else as best I can. Thanks for continuing to do both your best to pronounce and holding Brian accountable for pronouncing names correctly, like Adrian Yanez or Wang Song. I hope I'm saying that right. Got wisdom teeth taken out Monday. Stuck eating mushy food. Still got yours? Nope. Not only have I had my wisdom teeth taken out, I woke up in the middle of them taking it out. They didn't put me under enough. And I woke up with it, what felt like a guy with a pair of pliers yanking a tooth out of the back of my jaw. They had to give me more to put me. I can remember hearing them being like, he's waking up. I was like, yeah, bitch, I need an appropriate amount here. What the fuck are y'all doing? So anyway, it was fine. The thing is, you have holes in your mouth, and they give you this little like syringe that's got like a hook to it, and you got to rinse it out, and like all this gross ass food is going to come out of there, but it works. It'll be all right. George says, can you pinpoint the moment the UFC dropped the facade of professionalism? I say it was a slippery slope once we started doing shoeies. I don't know when it started, but it definitely crystallized when Dana White had the New Year's Eve incident with his wife. That's when there was no going back. Dustin says, what the hell happened to Josh Emmett? He gave Bryce Mitchell instant CTE, and I haven't heard from him since. He's been doing other stuff. I think he launched a beer and some other products locally to where he's at in Sacramento, so he's hanging out from what I can tell. I've heard a rumor they're trying to make Joel Alvarez versus BSD at 314. That fight is fucking awesome. Yeah, it is. France versus Spain. Please give me your initial thoughts on the matchup if it comes to fruition. All action, barn burner, holy fucking shit. You name it. Like that is Jordan Breen used to do every year the all violence team. And it was the guys who not only had wins, but they were like crushing brutal wins. He called it the all violence team. The winner of this one's going to end up in the all violence team. Liam says, who was the best striker you saw backstage while working for Glory? Wow. Krokop, Remy. I mean, I got to spend a bunch of time with Semi Schilt. That wasn't like we didn't fight, but I got to spend a bunch of time with him. Murat Gregorian, Simon Marcus. I got to spend some time with Potan. I got to spend time with Potan, but he was nothing back then. People barely knew who he was. He was nobody special. Artem Vakitov. Some big ones, man. Some big ones for sure. But probably Remy. Are you working on a collaboration with MMA Joey? Not yet. Not yet. Are you excited for Inoue's return to the UFC? Yes, but according to reporting from Jake Donovan, it might be delayed. So they were expecting it, I think, second or third quarter. It might be fourth. We'll see. Henry, can you talk about the backlash that Canelo would get if he chooses to fight Jake Paul over Bud Crawford late in the year? Is Canelo all about the money now? All about the money now? Guys, there is a lesson that you have to learn, which is that boxers are, I don't know if I want to call them the prostitutes. They're going to sell their ass to the highest bidder. And if you're Canelo and you've already been ignoring David Benavidez, David Morrell, all the mandatories that were tough, the sanctioning bodies aren't making you defend it. You're fighting, I'm sorry, the Jaime Munguia fight, people wanted to make that to be something great. It wasn't that great. And then he fought Edgar fucking Berlanga, which was a completely ridiculous choice. This to me actually lines up. To me, if he took a fight that was hard, that'd be the aberrant thing. This is actually the thing that makes the most sense given what he's shown us. And again, I want to say it. If you stopped his career after the Caleb Plant fight, that career is a Hall of Fame career. And it's not like this undoes that. He's only one more. It doesn't undo it. But I just want to be clear. Since Bivol, we're in a very different stage of things. Like that changed everything. And I don't think he'll get a bunch of blowback. I think that he'll say it's good for boxing. They're all going to do the same bullshit. They're all going to say it's good for boxing and we'll do big numbers. The fight, I was talking, you know what? I was talking to BC about this. BC and I have very different ideas. BC thinks that this fight looks like Rocky Fielding. You guys see the Rocky Fielding fight with Canelo? It lasted like 2.5 rounds. Canelo wiped him out. I think Canelo can beat Jake Paul that quickly if he wants to. But remember, Canelo admitted that he carried Jaime Munguia. Why wouldn't he carry Jake Paul for entertainment to make the thing go longer? I hate it. But these guys, they're whether it's Saudi Arabia or Jake Paul, they'll just sell their services to the highest bidder. That's just what they'll do. There's no follow the money. Follow the money. Derek Lewis has no ground game either. UFC should sign Nemkov. He is a free agent. Derek Lewis does good media. There's a big difference. GJ Brass, I randomly watched the January Grand Sumo tournament. The sport, respect, tradition were awesome. Is this a martial art you've ever watched at all? Yes, but a little bit. And also, I believe it's got religious ties to Shintoism. So it's a different cultural product than any other sport. Odds Elon Musk is in prison by 2035. If we are to survive, they should be high. If I can be honest just for a moment, my biggest concerns would be the debt ceiling. And giving these broccoli-haired teenage fuckfaces access to payment systems seems, and them changing the fucking code unilaterally is frightening. So the debt ceiling fight is one that I have great trepidation over. And then the other one would be, among many other things, these are like my most senior concerns. The other one would be that we get attacked, and that itself would unleash American society tearing itself apart. And you might be like, well, why do you think that? It's like, well, I lived through 9/11, and then American society tore itself apart. The biggest difference was that we just exported most of what we did to Iraq and the Middle East, and we destabilized the fuck out of it and killed hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people in the process unnecessarily, and then brought many of those terror tactics home. And it was a disaster for civil liberties. It was a disaster for political polarization. It was a disaster for civil society. It was a disaster for the entire country. And it was all embedded by this sort of desperate need for revenge that happened at 9/11. By the way, my friend I told you who was, is basically about to be laid off. I don't know what his current status is. He might have been laid off by now. I don't know. But 2 tours in Iraq, joined because he wanted to join after 9/11 to fight. That's who's getting purged. Again, I know everyone thinks it's like the DC chapter of the African National Congress, when they were taking up arms, but I assure you it is not. Do you have a list of journalists on Blue Sky that you would recommend to follow for news related to the nation and combat sports? Gotta leave Twitter because all these negative Third Reich accounts. It is the Third Reich on Twitter. Okay. Yeah, sure. I'll pull up some. Okay, let's see. Let me see a good one. Here, Mike Masnick is a good one. I'll put him up on the screen. This guy, Mike Masnick, he's good for tech and like the intersection between tech and the law. Let's see. Let me see. I'm gonna find some other good ones here. Oh, here we go. A dozen states say they will file a lawsuit challenging Doge access to government payment systems containing personal data. Yeah, about fucking time. Wow. USAID is getting chopped to under 300 employees from 14,000. Well, a little more than that. Well, actually, a little less than that. Excuse me. Wow. This is interesting. Marco Iles, that's the asshole that's changing the code at the Treasury, deleted an X account that advocated repealing the Civil Rights Act back to a, quote, eugenic immigration policy, end quote, and wrote, quote, you could not pay me to marry outside my ethnicity. He apparently has resigned. Good fucking riddance, dirtbag. Good fucking riddance. Jesus Christ. Also, Blue Sky is developing an Instagram competitor. It's called Flashes. It's not out yet, but they're making it. So that's one to hear. Let me go to I'm looking in the wrong place. Who am I following? There we go. This is better. Okay. Who do I like? That might be helpful to you. Here's no, you know what? I'll skip that one. You can always follow this guy for MMA, Chuck Mendenhall. He's on there. This is a great one for tech. 404 Media. They're fucking great. They're really good. This guy is great as like a sort of a standard. He lives in DC, but he covers sort of national lawsuits and things like that. Brad Heath. He's good. Let me see. Who else do I like? I'll give you one more. And this is a sort of a libertarian who I very much respect. Julian Sanchez. Right there. Smart guy. That'll get you started. When I was 29, I found MK moderately funny. Then all of a sudden I turned 30 and it's the internet's most hilarious show. I'm washed now and loving it. Welcome, my friend. Welcome to the washness. By the way, tomorrow live in studio with Chuck Mendenhall, UFC 312 preview. Tanvir says, Conor recently spit at a fan and also called an Irish boxer, Joan O'Carroll, who converted to Islam, a carpet licker, which is a fucking stupid insult. Not to mention his usage of the N-word, yet no statement from Dana or UFC. Why the double standard? You guys know why. You heard me say it early in the show. Thank you for the donation. They have crafted a speech policy that is not predicated on, we believe in the Socratic ideals and the Aristotelian debates necessary at the Lyceum. No, it is not that. It is, what do we do to make sure our speech policy, A, never interrupts our business, and B, we can cash in on the controversy that it causes. Maximum latitude to the business. Maximum help for the business. That's what they've done. And the fact that people think it's anything other than that is fucking hilarious to me. Jackson says, I'm a member of the channel, but I sometimes don't see the free super chat option. Pretty sure the error is on my end. Where can I get access to that? Just tag Othello as a member. He'll see it. Tag Othello. Like this. See it? Lately, I noticed as we get to the second half live chat, you try to blast through as many questions as possible quickly, and sometimes misinterpreting questions completely and moving on. That has been a problem. I've been trying to slow down a little bit more, but at times Tuki is waiting and I'm like a dad and I have to go see her. But you're right. It is a problem and I'm trying to do my best to limit it. If I miss something, tag Othello and we'll fix it. From outside the UFC, name 3 fighters you would draft to light heavyweight and 3 to heavyweight to increase the value skill in each division and add fun matchups. All right. Heavyweight, even though he fucked up, you could do you could do Malakin and Rug. Vadim Nemkov. Those are 3 you could go with. I think you'd be all right with. You could do Renan Fajeda if you wanted because he's going to be, boom or bust. At light heavyweight, I mean, they got rid of a bunch. Corey Anderson's still pretty good. Man, who are the big 205ers at PFL? I'm not sure. Who are the big 205ers? Let's see. Okay, 2024 season roster. Here, let's do light heavyweight. Let's see these donks. Okay, let's do this. Pull this up. Shoeface, I know he signed GFL. This is last season. I like him. Yaksha Muradov's pretty good. Obviously, Impa you could keep. That's 3 you could go with. Although he left, so that's just really 2. Conan's son is okay. Sadabu, I thought he was a fucking welterweight. What happened there? Rob's okay. Yeah, there's not many. It's slim pickings. Probably that. Marco Elez, engineer who has to the Treasury Department systems and ability to write code on security payment system, resigned after previous social media posts of racist comments and eugenics. He worked for 2 other Musk companies. Man, guys, I can't believe that the guy who daily retweets Holocaust deniers who had to go to an Israel trip because he said Jews were letting in immigrants to fuck over white people, who did an obvious Sieg Heil in public in front of the presidential seal and then tried to play it off like something else, has made subsequent Nazi jokes, would hire other guys who are neo-segregationists and irredeemably racist. Man, that is so surprising to me. I can't believe that these guys didn't turn out to be Jainists or, people who spent their time helping others at Goodwill or something, and that they turn out to be neo-segregationists, eugenicists, and otherwise irredeemable pieces of shit. Dave says, who is your favorite active comedian and why is it Tony Hinchcliffe? It's not Tony Hinchcliffe. It's probably Bill Burr. I was going to say Doug Stanhope, but he's kind of, I don't know, withered like a raisin. Doug Stanhope's body of work is still better than most people's, but the newer stuff has been less effective to me. Jeff says, I have no interest in being made fun of for deploying to Gaza from the Trump Riviera to the sea. I do not want that on my DD-214. Yeah, I don't know who does. What's up, Luis? Thank you, my friend. Kane, as a non-American, I've never understood executive orders. It's dictatorial and lack the legislature or checks is insane. What's the local feeling? Well, the feeling here in D.C. is terror. But executive orders have been used for a very, very long time. It's not really nothing new. And in fact, Trump is hardly the first guy to use them in a very aggressive way. Now, this is like especially aggressive, but he didn't invent this. This didn't really be, again, Bush before them and Clinton before them. There's been executive orders all the way before. But this became a real problem when Obama was elected because, here, look. Residential. Let me show you something. Okay. Let's look here. Let me show you this. This is, people get bitter when I show them this, but the math is what the math is. I didn't make it up. You have to accept it. This right here, this column where it's 1.5, 4.5, -2, that is the margin of victory of the popular vote. Okay, so Donald Trump in this last election had a 1.5 point differential, which is, he's the clear winner, but it's minor. In fact, it's one of the most minor ones since the Great Depression. Go back to Barack Obama in 2008, 7.2, a categorically vastly different scenario. 7.2 was the difference in margin there, right? So this motherfucker comes in there with this is, the world saying no to Iraq, no to George Bush, no to Dick Cheney, all that shit. And they elect Barack Obama, who has more than a 7-point differential when he comes in. He goes down to the Hill to meet with Republican senators and congressmen. I think it was just the senators. And it went real poorly. They didn't buy into a single thing he wanted to do because he wanted to see, how can we craft legislation to solve some of these problems. And it was a smart political strategy. They said, here's what we're going to do. We're going to vote no on everything, every fucking thing, everything imaginable. So what ended up happening was there was no way to really get a lot governed. And it created this situation where the presidency began to just issue executive order. And in fact, you can find very legitimate criticisms of Barack Obama's abuse of executive orders in terms of how many were overturned by court order, how many exceeded executive authority, you name it. If you issue that many orders from a place where not many can be, there's not much you can legally do. There's some stuff you can do, but you are obviously constrained legally, then you're going to get into trouble. Well, Trump then comes in after him, does the same thing. Biden comes in after him and does the same thing because the polarization and the gridlock hasn't changed. So now the presidency has been just reduced to just issuing executive orders, which now leads us to this particular situation where now it's just like this avalanche of them. And, a bunch of them have already been either suspended or, paused or whatever the proper legal terminology is. But that's where again, executive orders have a long history, much longer than that. But this overemphasis on the executive, using that as their primary method to affect policy change, that started in 2008, and from polarization, from Mitch McConnell essentially, and it has not made the executive a better functioning branch. I think you would agree, independent of who occupies the office. As far as baseless speculation goes, what are your thoughts on Arman pulling out due to disastrous weight cut instead of an injury? Seems plausible. I don't know. I know a bunch of people think he faked it. I don't know. I don't think so. Louis says, do you think Jake Paul Payton's off Canelo to not knock him out? I'll just say this. Canelo fucking admitted he carried Munguia. Whatever they one way or another, it seems reasonable to conclude you're going to get a shitty ass fight because of that. I know it's an older movie, but did you ever see the Japanese movies Battle Royale? And what did you think? I did not. Trump and the mainstream conservative world are vehemently pro-Israel, while there is an anti-Semitic surge in young conservative men. How will the right reconcile this, and where will it lead? Well, the ones who have all the power are the donor class. I was talking about this with Othello. Othello can tell you this. Why is Trump so like Biden before him? Trump put in Mike Huckabee as the ambassador to Israel. A complete evangelist fucking nutcase. But he took $100 million plus for Miriam Adelson in the last election cycle, and I think that came with explicit promises to annex the West Bank and Gaza as well. So the donor class, like with everything in this country, with rare exception, the donor class is going to get what they want, and you and I are left with whatever else they give us. That's what I mean, dude. That's what I mean, guys. When I say us, I mean it. You can say I don't agree with you at all. Fine, whatever. You can say whatever the fuck you want. But the fact is, our lives are much closer together than your life with the donor class, than your life with the billionaire class. Our lives are much more close together, and you know that. The challenges that you face day to day are pretty typically the same challenges that I face day to day. The challenges are the things that you want for your community, with some exception, of course. There's going to be some political battles. I'm not saying they're all the same, but in the broad strokes, they're pretty fucking similar. I've had this conversation with Othello too. Othello agrees with most of you donks. He doesn't agree with me hardly at all, but that's okay. I understand that. I'm cool with that. But one thing that we both know is our lives are much closer together. I know his wife. He knows my wife. I've met his kids. I know his kids. They know my kid. I've seen his life and my life. We live in similar areas. He lives out, he doesn't live super close to me, but we live in the DMV area. His kids go to public school. My kids go to public school. He's, a married father. I'm a married father. He, like his mortgage, my mortgage, like all the basic notes of life and the things that we want. And you want better infrastructure. I want better infrastructure, especially for your area, because it's the same as mine. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so he and I can, and we disagree on stuff all the time, and that's okay. But as a point I've made to him, and I think for the most part he agrees. Like, there's a lot of shit that like you have to just imagine your life is not what it is to think that it is in line with the goals of Elon Musk. Like, it's so fucking vastly apart from that. It's not even funny. What's up, Saul? MK all day. Thank you, my friend. Will the Ali Act ever be applied to MMA during our lifetime? During our lifetime? No, I don't think so. J-Flow, couldn't get the free super chat today as a member. Saw others were having the same issue. Not sure if there's anything you can do. I don't know. Again, if you ever have an issue and you're a member, please tag Othello. He should see everything. Okay? So I apologize if there's been an issue, but please tag Othello. Angel says, can you go into the potential of Jack Jenkins? Good striker. He didn't have the greatest showing last time, correct? Where are we with this? Where's old Jack? What was the fight he had that fucked everything up? Oh, no, it was the Chepe Mariscal fight. He rebounded against Herbert Burns. Yeah, I thought he had a really bright future. I don't know what the Gabriel Santos fight will teach us, but he looked like he had real ability, real good advanced striking. But that setback against Chepe kind of hurt his stock, and it's about rebuilding it now. Pac has 20-inch wrists average heavyweight. Oh, yeah, Manny Pacquiao. His wrist is huge. With his calves' ability to hit shots on one foot, is Pac the greatest physical anomaly in boxing? I'm tempted to say Andy Ruiz is, or Butterbean. But among the smaller guys, yeah, Pac's got weird physical build that is like specially suited for boxing. I've been seeing news about Crawford versus Canelo. What do you think? What do you make of that matchup? And what weight classes do you think would be best for it? That would probably be, I don't know if Canelo would go down to 160. I think Crawford would go up, but they canceled the whole thing, or at least they said it's not going to happen now, or it's not happening imminently. Like, Turkey was obviously releasing bullshit to put pressure on the guys, and they reported it, and it turned out to be completely bullshit and not time. But I think Crawford is better than Canelo. It's just a question of, is the size enough to overcome it? Ring Mag reporting Canelo versus Crawford off. Yep, just as I said. Hearn stating that Canelo versus Paul is a done deal. Fake news? No, not fake news. Not fake news at all. Terrence, choose one live event to go to, KSW or Ryzen New Year. Ryzen. I love KSW, but Ryzen is going to see MMA in Japan on New Year's Eve is on the bucket list. Alan says, Canelo don't care. Canelo don't give a shit. I know. You're right. I know. Gibson says, you mentioned Jordan Breen. Makes me think of those who left MMA like Esther Lynn, Patrick Wyman, and Breen. Hope they know they're missed. Patrick Wyman's all over, still doing history stuff. Esther Lynn is still doing some boxing stuff. Jordan, I haven't heard from in a long time. I don't know where he is. Enarch says, game recommendations for Sniper Elite Resistance. Did you see that the UFC blacked out portions of the 312 press conference to limit Sean? I don't know. I don't know what the fuck that is. Two Changs, what are the chances Trump actually tries to take over Gaza? Chances UFC would hold an event there? I don't think I think they'll try to do the same thing that Biden did, which was pressure Egypt and Jordan, and they're like absolutely one. Like Saudi Arabia came out like within an hour of Trump saying that at that press event. Saudi Arabia came out and was like, okay, here's how this is going to go. We will, like, unless there's a Palestinian state, there will be no bilateral relations with Israel, period. So I tend to think there's enough making it not possible. Luke, what should Weili do next if she wins this Saturday? Compete more regularly? I don't give a fuck who she fights. Just stay active. That's what she should do. With the time she has remaining, stay active. Ahmed says, Sean Strickland calling Palestinians filthy and essentially wrongfully blaming them for starting the whole beef with Israel. I don't know what to say. I mean, again, what segment of American society reckons with the humanity of Palestinian life? I mean, the last place that's going to happen is MMA, but it ain't the only fucking place. This is the byproduct of just decades and decades, and more recently, the last 15 months of incredible Palestinian dehumanization. Johnson says, last week I was just pointing out you say home instead of hone is all. Keep up the go. Oh, like home in. Yeah. Rep Barbas. Yes. Thank you, my friends. Joe says, love the chat, but doesn't it kind of lessen the heaviness of the word to frivolously toss around the term Nazi as an insult? It would if it were frivolous. I don't think tossing it around in the case of Elon Musk. I mean, again, is he like, even if it's an ironic bit that he's doing, or even if it's just triggering the libs, that you are breathing life into this and bringing it into the world, what you are doing is you are creating a permission structure for more of it, whether it's the outright adoption, whether it's for other symbols and ideology or various, slurs, you name it, whatever. You're creating a permission structure for more. Everyone wants to fucking hide behind, oh, it's the regulation of speech. It is not the regulation of speech. It is asking you to defend the merit of your ideas. And if the merit of your ideas is eugenics, if the merit of your ideas is the Jews are filthy, if the merit of your ideas is obviously this insane shit, and again, if the sum total of what you are doing is bringing these things into the public consciousness, whether because you believe it or to trigger the libs because you're emotionally underdeveloped and women don't love you, it's a difference without a distinction. The ultimate result of it is the same kind of, or at least very similar kind of, Overton window expansion, normalization, permission structure that you're bringing in to make it all more palatable. You got to put a fucking stop to that shit immediately. Like it is very easy to distance yourself from that. And again, looking at everything else that this guy tweets, and it's continuous Pizzagate truthers, it's continuous Holocaust deniers, it's continuous absolutely fact-free, I mean, without the slightest degree of hesitation or in any attempt to get it right. He'll delete his own community notes about his own tweets all the fucking time. He is an inveterate, absolutely unrepentant liar and an espouser of absolutely insanely either outright Nazi beliefs or at a bare minimum adjacent to that. And again, I'm doing it ironically. If you are doing it at all in any kind of way where you are trying to wink your to the process by which you are bringing it into broader discourse. I don't know who the fuck this is. Yeah, you are responsible as well. Not you, but proverbial you. Canadians have an international reputation for being polite. It must take a lot of them to boo a national anthem. People don't remember this, but when a lot of Americans traveled right after 9/11, they would say that they were Canadian to avoid issue when abroad. Why do you talk about Islamophobia as if I found it in nothing when you're aware of the contents of the Quran? The ideology is entirely regressive. Yeah, this is something you'd believe if you knew nothing about Islam. This is something, if you're brain addled and the entire understanding of what Islam says, and what role it has in the world has been a fire hose of conservative media, yes, you'll believe nonsense bullshit like this. Yes. Kevin says, what does this make me part of the donor class? Small donor class. I'll take 100 million. But I'll take, 2 as well. Anil says, love Kyle Kalinske taking gloves off Rogan and other so-called independent media. What a disappointment the independent media scene has become, just a den of lies and disinfo. It is amazing. Like, again, when they were subversive and they were able to talk about the things that mainstream media didn't talk about in any kind of serious way, they were really fulfilling an important role. And that does still happen on occasion. But now that media is disintegrating, they have taken on new responsibility, which is, rather than them saying what didn't happen, they're now the ones bringing you the action. This can be through, interviews with the principal actors of various policies, governments, private actors, you name it, and then not holding them to account at all, having no standards by which you push back even a little bit. And now they just end up getting their reputations, ideas, and their backgrounds laundered. Is pathetic. It's pathetic. It's fucking pathetic. It is a pathetic and ignoble end to something that had a real utility. And again, on occasion still can, but has just surrendered it by being absolutely unwilling to make any part of their media adversarial to any part of it other than the caricaturized versions of their, adversaries. Othello is being whored too much. Nah, he's good. Am I a donk for saying Maurice Smith versus Mark Coleman is the MMA equivalent of rope-a-dope? No, it's not. I mean, yes, no, you're not crazy. Like, I mean, the better example is obviously Tito versus Frank Shamrock, but that's a good one too. Smith over Conan and then Coleman is pretty forgotten. That is also true. Jeffrey says, how close are we to UFC press calling Dana his excellency? Not far. Not far. The glazing will soon be, thank you for gracing us with Greg Hardy versus Parker Porter. What did you think of Kanye's Emmy stunt? I don't even know what the fuck that is. And thank God I don't. Another fucking gross anti-Semite. B, could the call for U.S. troops to Gaza lead to blowback from within the ranks? It could. The ambition is explicitly illegal, and the adversary, it's 100% illegal. And the adversaries would not just be in Pali, but across the region. A simple handover is not feasible. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what's going to happen, but I mean, it's hard to know what's going to happen, but I figure that one thing that's likely to happen is that the ceasefire is going to break and Israel's going to go back to bombing. I think that is one of the more likely possibilities. Deronimer says, I watched the last 2 rounds of Khamzat's fight with Usman. I think people underrate his cardio. While he wasn't as active as in the first, his energy and pressure didn't seem too bad, especially in the third. Agreed. But he did fade. Yoshiro says, thank you for the guidance over the years. I still quote you when I hear someone likes yellow mustard. From a dumb 20-year-old to a 36-year-old with an amazing career, your guidance and voice has always been there. That's very nice of you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. DJ Serenity, what's your opinion on politics? It is a sad state of affairs. That's my opinion. Fedor versus Randy, 2006. Who wins? Fedor. I'm a new member as of last week. I've gone back and watched some of your member-only content. Great stuff. Keep it up. And stop vaping, brother. I stopped. I haven't done it in a while. Ariel tweeted that Paul versus Canelo is not done and reports that are premature. It is in talks. Yes, but the talks are real. Very real. I don't think they're finish line, but they're close. All right, boys and girls. Thank you so much for watching. I greatly appreciate it. MK tomorrow in New York City, live. Me, Chuck Mindenhall. Chuck Mindenhall back for the first time in a long time. And we're going to do a pregame preview, a live pregame preview, 11 a.m. YouTube.com/Morning Combat. And it'll be great. So I appreciate you guys watching. Thank you so much. And Luke Thomas News at gmail.com if you need to reach me. All right. Stay tuned, boys and girls. Oh, and of course, a live stream this weekend, post-fight show, live watch along. You know it. UFC 312. We'll be there. So we're going to have a great time. All right. Love you all. Until next time. Oops. Is there another one? That's it. Stay frosty. Bye.